Senate Committee on State Affairs will come to order. Good afternoon. The chair lays out Senate Bill 175 that had been left pending, and we will resume public testimony. The chair calls the following witnesses to testify on, for, or against Senate Bill 175, and I'll call your name. Please make your way down to the table here and take a seat. We want to hear from you. The chair calls Fran Rhodes, Honorable David Billings, Honorable David Stout, Trudy Meyer. The chair calls Fran Rhodes, Honorable David Billings, David Stout. Very good, very good. Have a seat, please. And Trudy Meyer. Okay.
Yeah, like
Almost there. Okay, still looking for Fran Rhodes. So Ms. Rhodes, very well. Gentlemen, welcome. When you're have a seat, make yourselves comfortable. We always go, or usually go, from my left to your right. And so we'll start over here. Introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
How long do we have, Chairman?
I beg your pardon?
How long do we have for the testimony?
2 minutes.
2 minutes? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, honorable members. My name is David Stout. I'm a county commissioner in El Paso, Texas. I'm here representing my county, my precinct, and myself, and I'm here to testify against SB 175. County government is complex as a state government, and commissioners' courts have so much work to do in our communities. I've been told that the state legislature likes to hear from local elected officials, so I try to come up here a couple times each legislative session and testify. I also know that communities like mine that are far from the capital many times are forgotten and left out if we can't communicate with the state legislature. That said, you all know that the work over these 4.5 months of regular session and sometimes more time in special sessions is more than what takes place at these hearings. And you know that my colleagues and I can't and shouldn't be here every day. You also know that more than 9,000 bills have been filed this session, and over 3,000 of them involve counties in some way. I don't have the capacity to track all those bills. It takes full-time experts to track and participate in the development of a concept as it becomes a bill and as a bill is shaped over the weeks and months. That's why we have professionals to follow the process and keep local policymakers deeply informed. That's why all of you also count on so many full-time staffers to advise you regarding on all of the bills that are filed. Sometimes you even rely on the experts that counties employ to help you at the state. For example, do you all remember the fiasco with the juvenile justice system last year? If counties had not provided services to house and treat the kids that were responsible to the state, the entire juvenile justice system would have crashed. It was the Texas Conference of Urban Counties and the County Judges and Commissioners Association that coordinated the efforts with the TJJD and worked to reverse their decision and reopen some services to save that system. Organizations like the CUC and its members work to protect taxpayers every day, such as helping quantify the cost of state services that are shifted to local taxpayers, and they work to help us address those issues. These experts are often former legislative staffers and or subject matter experts who understand the nuances of state government. They catch things that those of us that are not experts on state government miss, and that's why you all hire state lobbyists to go to Washington, D.C., and it's wrong to deny your constituents the same right to that advocacy at the state level. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mayor, introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
my name is David Billings. I'm honored to be the mayor of Fayette, Texas, and I come here often, as some senators probably know by now. I'm here to provide testimony against SB 175 on local communities throughout Texas. As legislature, each of you have a hometown someplace in Texas that you consider special. Your city is special because of local decisions that made and shaped the character of your city you represent. As a reminder, the Texas State Constitution, Bill of Rights, Section 1, summarizes that Texas is a free, independent state, and the right of local self-government shall remain unimpaired. Communities would have the right to grow their cities into unique and great places to work, live, play, and learn. It doesn't expect local government officials to address your needs. Cities, in turn, like me, come to you, our representatives for assistance, and to make you aware how local issues affect or impacted by state laws or proposed legislation. If you limit the ability of local government to employ consultants to help address our concerns, you're actually limiting the voice of your very own constituents who shares the city to live in. And should this bill be passed, it will limit our ability to design safe, financially viable cities with a high quality of life that drives the economic development engine of Texas. Two other points real quickly. One is we have a very transparent budget process, so any line item in the budget, this doesn't have the right to speak multiple times in public hearings. There's no secret sauce, there's no secret budget being passed. The second point is transparency. I absolutely agree that if we have a consultant contract, it should be a separate agenda item, should be voted on by City Council, and each City Council should pass a legislature agenda to help outline what the City Council has agreed to. I think those are very important points. So thank you for the time tonight, and I'll entertain any questions.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Mayor, thank you both. Senators, any questions for the witnesses? Thank you for being here. Did you know Congressman Hall? Would you? I thought you probably would have.
Yeah, but I'm sure you would have questions for me because we respectfully disagree on this issue. But that's good, right? That's why we're here, and that's why we're.
I did not bring him up because of the issue. I just brought him up because he was from Fay. Good to have you. Good to have you from El Paso, Commissioner. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
The chair now calls Zach Davidson, Constable Justin West, Iwan Blackman, Jennifer Simpson, Goldie Sunshine. Again, the chair calls Zach Davidson, Honorable Justin West, Iwan Blackman, Jennifer Simpson, Goldie Sunshine. Well, I've got plenty of chairs. Just make your way there and have a seat. There's two more on this side and one on the opposite side. You guys make yourselves at home. All right, once you get situated to get close enough to the microphone, make sure it's on, and we'll begin over here on your right, on my left. So go ahead, please introduce yourself. Give us your testimony. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Goldie Sunshine. I'm a public school teacher in Texas. I'm not representing my district, I'm representing myself. This is my 16th year in education. I'm speaking in favor of Senate Bill 175. I'm concerned that my taxpayer dollars are being used to pay organizations like TASB, who advise school boards, who then push policies on administrators, who then dictate down to teachers. TASB has changed their policies, and one of the issues they want administrators to do is to look at each case on transgender, case by case, and decide if they're going to inform the parents. Well, I'm here to say that as a teacher and an administrator, I'm not an administrator, but as administrators are responsible too, they are the in loco parentis, they are the acting parent. They have a duty to inform the parents, but as with other issues, they will tell the teacher, they will inform the parents, and that this may or may not happen. Thus, they are kind of operantly conditioning the teachers to fear retaliation if they ask the administrators about it. No organization needs to have this kind of control. We can no longer stick our heads in the sand and ignore the issues. The woke organizations like TASB should not be getting taxpayer dollars to break boundaries and leave children and parents out of conversations. Please stop this social construct perpetuated by those trying to destabilize and demoralize the children and teachers in the state of Texas. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Thanks for being here. Welcome. Introduce yourself and give us your testimony.
Yeah, Chair, members of the committee, my name is Zach Davidson, and I serve as the Government Relations Director for Galveston County, Texas. I'm here today, here before you today to express Galveston County's support for SB 175. Each legislative session, resources and lobbyists funded by taxpayer funds are used to influence legislation, often against the wishes of local elected officials. Just today in the House Ways and Means Committee, lobbyists from the Texas Association of Counties were testifying against appraisal caps. Galveston County's Commissioners Court unanimously supports appraisal caps. It is clear that the Texas Association of Counties and their subsidiaries in no way, shape, or form represent the values or speak for Galveston County, despite their claims to be the voices of all counties in Texas. This important piece of legislation would rein in unaccountable taxpayer-funded lobbyists. Most importantly, it would return statewide government associations to their original mission. These associations, such as the Texas Association of Counties, offer many important services to local governments, including training, education, and risk pool benefits. Unfortunately, these associations now use taxpayer funds they receive for these services to fund a lobbying juggernaut that pushes an agenda in defiance of the wishes of their members. Most disturbingly, these associations now believe that they alone are the sole voice for local governments and the arbiters of what is best for Texas counties. They actively mislead local elected officials and members of the legislature in their quest to expand their power and influence. The fact is that despite the claims from these associations that they represent all 254 counties in Texas, it is impossible for one group to accurately represent the views of every local elected official. When voters elect their local officials, they expect them to advocate for them not only locally, but also regionally, statewide, and nationally. SB 175 would not prevent local officials from doing this important job. SB 175 would serve to level the playing field for local elected officials by keeping taxpayer money out of the hands of lobbyists. I believe you all have received a letter from Commissioner Darrell Atfel from Galveston County, County Judge Mark Henry from Galveston County, as well as the resolution passed by the Galveston County Commissioners Court. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for your testimony. Welcome. Introduce yourself and give us your testimony.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Justin West. I'm the elected constable for Galveston County Precinct 4. I'm here as an elected office holder from Galveston County, and I'm speaking in support of Senate Bill 175, or commonly known as the taxpayer-funded lobbying bill. As allowed under current state law, any elected official or employee of a local subdivision, government subdivision, can come and speak to legislators. We are not going to be prohibited from doing that. This bill does nothing to prohibit that. As well, it simply stops expenditure of tax dollars for paying for registered lobbyists for lobbying efforts. And in discussing this, I want to point out that this is specific to that act. In addition to being an elected office holder, I'm also a member of the TAC core legislative team. I'm a member of the JPCA, which is one of the affiliate organizations. I'm a member of their legislative team as well. And part of that team, every time we meet, we talk about how they're not able to take a position on a bill. What they do is they track and they inform the membership and they garner feedback for legislators on what the membership says. Now, that's not just them, it's all state agencies. And it appears that these state agencies have decided to either ignore or forget that that is their charge. So a lot of the state agencies will form their own opinion. They will bring in money and put money towards these registered lobbyists to go and do that will of whoever decided what that opinion would be. So as we appreciate what the intent of these associations was designed to do. For example, TAC has the risk pools, the insurance pools. They do the legal counsel. They do the training conferences. Those things are great. But for them to take away from what we do, for example, the Galveston County Treasurer's Bill that's coming up, I know that my affiliate organization has taken a stand even before the bill was filed that they're going to be against it, not knowing what's in it. And in talking to the leadership of the committee, that was what the executive board decided to do. I'm against that. And again, as an elected official, I can take my own stand on that. Now, they do good work, but sometimes that work sways and goes against what we want in our local offices. So taxpayer-funded lobbying continues to grow and now accounts for millions of dollars of taxpayer money being spent influencing legislature and their legislation. The lobbying effort is funded through many of the state organizations or associations through tax dollars. I pay my own dues to these associations because I don't want tax dollars going to some of the other things, so that's out of my pocket. While it's a benefit to local government by providing these much-needed training, education, risk pool, associations lobbying their own agendas directly against local government. Senate Bill 175 is an important piece of legislation and should be passed so that local taxpayers' voices can be restored. These state associations should not be allowed to continue hijacking our democracy using taxpayer funds against us. And thank you to Senator Middleton for filing this legislation.
Thank you, Councilman. Welcome. Introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Simpson. I'm a Texas public school teacher. This is my 14th year of teaching. I'm here representing myself. I'm not representing my district. I am a member of Innovative Teachers of Texas. With the changes happening in education and behavior within the schools, I felt this was a perfect time to join a teacher organization. The only organizations I found when I looked online were ones that hired lobbyists to push beliefs that did not reflect my own. Several times I was so close to signing up, but I couldn't make myself click that button, knowing that my membership dues would help pay to advance their agenda. I was able to make that decision to not spend my own money to support, for them to support things that I did not support. When I found Innovative Teachers of Texas, I read that they do not hire lobbyists, but rather they ask teachers to speak for themselves as professionals on issues they feel passionate about, and I joined immediately. This is why I'm here today, to speak in favor of Senate Bill 175. I do not believe that taxpayer dollars should be used to fund lobbyists. Groups such as TASB are currently lobbying against education savings accounts and vouchers. Many of my friends and my coworkers support ESAs because it's doing what's best for our students. As a teacher, that's what we do day in and day out. Knowing that my property taxes are going to fund the agenda of TASB is disturbing. This is not just because I'm in favor of ESAs, but because denying an opportunity for our children and our students to receive the best education to suit their individual needs is doing them a disservice, and I see it every year. But these groups continue to fight against ESAs and vouchers, and they're doing it on taxpayers' dime. This is just one of my concerns that I have, but I ask that you please pass Senate Bill 175 and do the right thing for Texas taxpayers and students. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Welcome. Introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
Hi, I'm Ewan Blackman, and I'm testifying in support of Senate Bill 175, against taxpayer lobbying for sure. Governor Ann Richards said that teaching was the hardest work she'd ever done, and that remained the fact even after she was governor. So now I do that teaching, and I do this advocating for education. I'm involved in my local school district, attending all the school board meetings for the past 7 years. Yet we have a lobbyist that we pay some $70,000 a year to work for the district. She gets paid to come to here, to develop relationships, and to advocate for whatever my district wants. Where is the taxpayer's openness of governance? I am essentially paying someone my taxes to advocate for the entity spending my money, the school district, trying to get more money from the other entity, which is also spending my money, the taxes, which is the State House. Case in point, our superintendent, Dr. Stone, formerly a superintendent for Richardson ISD, was instrumental in passing a tax ratification election, or tax hike, under the guise of helping kids. They went with slogans such as vote for our ISD, vote for our kids. After passage, her salary and benefits skyrocketed from just 5% to 15% retention bonuses, so about $14,000 to $50,000 per year. Salary increases from $289,000 to $330,000. The TASB, a taxpayer-funded lobbying firm, then gave ideas to school districts on how to find creative ways to pay superintendents more money without it showing up as a salary. So they then paid her TRS, retirement, and her 403B stipends for some $75,000 a year extra. So if we did the math on all of that, $330,000 salary, $50,000 stipend, and another $75,000 stipend for $454,000 a year, that's 3 times what we pay our governor. That's to be a superintendent of a school district. We don't go from A to Z. We go from A to B to C, incrementally, like the frog boiling in the pot. Please vote for this bill. Let's close the door on this nonsense. Another good example of where TASB locks out the teachers is I had an issue a few years ago with a no-play reading of that law, and I disagreed with my school district on how they interpret that. I was able to call down here in Austin. I was able to get somebody to call me back and put me in touch with the person that sponsored that bill. They then told me that my reading was correct and my district was incorrect, and after that I'd contacted the attorney with our district, and they were able to then change the policy. That's how the system should work. Fast forward 5 years, I had a different issue with a school policy that I believe the school district was reading incorrectly. I asked who wrote the policy. They told me TASB wrote the policy, and so I contacted TASB just as I had contacted my representatives down here. And TASB told me they will not talk to me, they will not talk to parents, they only represent school boards, and basically just said that was the end of it. So you can't actually find out any information about these folks that are writing these policies at great length. And when you disagree with how somebody else is reading it, because it's open for interpretation, as you as lawmakers are all well aware. And so I find that those types of lobbyists who come down here and advocate for interests against my own should be stopped. So please vote for this. And if you have any questions or any other anecdotes, happy to share those. And thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Members, any questions for any of our witnesses? Thank you all for traveling here and sharing your story with us, sharing your experience. Thank you. Chair calls Chief Deputy Jimmy Jackson. Jimmy Jackson, Sheriff Wayne Dickey, Sheriff Ray Safress, Mildred Hewlin, and Leah Hewlin. So again, Chief Deputy Jimmy Jackson, Sheriff Wayne Dickey, Sheriff Wayne Safress, Mildred Hewlin, Leah Hewlin. Welcome.
Thank you.
Chief Jackson, you're first up. Introduce yourself and give us your testimony.
Thank you, Senator and committee members. My name is Jimmy Jackson, and I'm the Chief Deputy for the Sheriff's Office in Smith County. I'm here today on behalf of my Sheriff's Office and the Sheriff's Association of Texas in opposition of Senate Bill 175. The consequences of this bill will silence one of the oldest and largest law enforcement associations in Texas. Losing the ability to utilize paid lobbyists for research and assistance on important law enforcement issues eliminates a united voice of Texas sheriffs at the Capitol and forces all Texas sheriffs to work independently. The money spent on dues to the Sheriff's Association of Texas pales in comparison to the amount of money we would have to spend to form our own legislative unit. Contrary to some of the testimony I've heard today, whether it's the Texas Association of Counties or whether it's paid lobbyists for the Sheriff's Association of Texas, they do not take a position on legislation. Rather, they gather research and gather information and allow the association and the sheriffs to form an opinion and deliver that united message at the Capitol. I've heard it talked today about calling our local senators, and I'm blessed in Smith County, Texas, to have Senator Hughes, who answers the phone and every text message I send him. I can only imagine how many more phone calls and text messages are going to go to Senator Hughes if I have to evaluate individually or hire a bill tracker to track all the pieces of law enforcement legislation. It's important that the Sheriff's Association has the ability to bring a unified front to the Capitol, and this bill makes it more burdensome, and I ask you to vote no on Senate Bill 175.
Thank you, Chief Jackson. Sheriff, introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
Yes, Mr. Sheriff, thank you very much. I do give you great credit for attempting to pronounce my last name. My last name is Ray Cyphers is my name. I'm the sheriff in Hockley County, Texas. Don't worry, I've only had one teacher in my entire educational career get it correct on the first try. I'm here in several capacities today, really representing, yes, myself, but also the citizens of Hockley County. I did hear some testimony earlier today that talks about how disconnected some lobbyists and some associations may be from their local communities. And I'm here to tell you that I think the Sheriff's Association of Texas is not that way. If you want a direct line back to the citizenry of your community, go talk to your sheriff. My wife, at one time, used to leave me in the grocery store because I would go with her and go shopping trips, and she started to dread that for a while because I would get stopped in aisles. And we would talk about local issues, local public safety matters, concerns of our constituents, those who put us in office. Continually, we would have those conversations. And from there, from the grocery store to our office to Austin, those issues come. And we are connected. If you want to see someone who's connected, look at your sheriff. The Sheriff's Association represents not only our employees, not just the elected sheriffs and our deputies and our jailers who work so hard for us every day. We've got a membership of associate members of over 28,000 citizens in Texas we represent. And we are their voice. And then we also, again, we do employ lobbyists, to be sure. And they come after us to say, what is the issue that's affecting you at the local level? And how can this be addressed in Austin in the best way possible? And he is absolutely correct. Any dollars that would be spent are minuscule compared to what it would be if we had to go out and hire our own folks. Essentially what is going on at the bill as it's written, I can tell you, it essentially makes us choose between two sides. You are a training facility. We do offer outstanding training across the state to our deputies and to our other sheriffs. Couple that with, if we pay for that training with our local funds, we are now becoming or funding a lobby organization, if I understand this correctly. So I ask you to reconsider this and look at this and vote no. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheriff. Sheriff Cyphers, Senator Perry has a question for you. How did I do? Cyphers?
Thank you for coming from Levelland, Texas, in my district. And I think I have text from you that actually wasn't about Senate Bill 175. So you've got my number. We typically, can connect with each other pretty well, but you're a very solid example of an engaged sheriff in Hockley County, but not only that, but just in the area. So I do appreciate what you do. And
thank you very much.
You do a good job with some challenges sometimes.
It is, and I know, and we have had conversations, much like I have with my representative, about some things over the years, different sessions, and we seek to continually improve. I know this legislature, and like legislatures before it, continue to try to improve policing, and we are a voice to tell you what that looks like on the ground. We tell you exactly what effect that's going to have. So I'm appreciative to the opportunity to engage y'all, and thank you for allowing us to come today.
Thank you, Sheriff. Sheriff Dickey, introduce yourself and give us your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. Wayne Dickey, Sheriff of Brazos County, Texas. Senator Schwartner, good to see you, sir. I'd like to reiterate many of the things that the other sheriffs have shared with you quickly. As I said and listened to the testimony today, there's certainly some challenges that have been brought about listening to the testimonies about school districts and other things like that that are certainly need to be addressed. The point I would like to reiterate is that that's not the story with the Sheriff's Association of Texas. That we've got an engaged leadership in that organization that reaches out to sheriffs frequently to get information out about various bills that impact local safety, local sheriffs, and we have an opportunity to participate through Zoom calls and other meetings to provide our positions and our opinions that then the Sheriff's Association and their lobbyists can bring to the Capitol and share with legislators. And we believe that we have that opportunity to actively influence those positions, where it sounds like in some cases that is not true. Some of the concerns that we've touched on is cost. I know one suggestion is that we could hire personnel to do this bill tracking and other work in our offices, and then participate in discussions with our members directly. As you can see, it would be difficult to have a couple of hundred staff members across the state trying to do this independently, where it's much more efficient to do it, much more fiscally conservative to do it together. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Sheriff. Senator Menendez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to see if I could help the sheriff finish that thought. So, Sheriff, what you're saying is that rather than adding personnel or FTEs to your full-time equivalents to your staff for something that occurs every other year, wouldn't it be more cost-effective for, as an association, all of y'all to share in the cost? You pay your dues, and then you have your say, basically what you were talking about, the tracking that occurs and all that. rather than you having to go to your county commissioner's court and county judge asking them for an increase in your budget and decrease up and down and then you're at the whim of whether or not you're going to get that approved. So this is just a cost-effective way of sharing those expenses and being represented, correct?
Absolutely. The ability for all the sheriffs in Texas to work through the Sheriff's Association and the 2 people employed to work at the Capitol is much more efficient, in my opinion.
So do you all feel that your association ever does something or advocates for stuff that go counter to your constituents?
Certainly, when you have a Zoom call full of elected officials, there are times when there's not 100% consensus. And those are those opportunities where I think then, if the association took a position on a bill that I disagreed with, then I feel like in that one-off, I can go to my senator or to my representative and say, help me with this.
You still have your voice.
I still have a voice that way.
I appreciate it. You've made a good case against the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Menendez. Senator Middleton.
Thank you all for coming today. This was brought up last session, because this is a similar version of the bill that, I think, HB 749. And in the testimony at that time from, I think it was a Polk County Sheriff, somewhere in East Texas. Anyway, he did not say that it impacted the Sheriff's Association directly. He said it impacts counties, and that's why he was against it at the time, which is one of the things that we addressed with the committee substitute here, where we struck the repealer, right? That I hope y'all saw that. If not, I'll give y'all a copy of the committee substitute here that struck the repealer in 89002, which is basically explicitly laying out that counties can associate. So we put that back in the committee substitute. But just to be clear on who the bill applies to, so for the purposes of associations, it only applies to associations that primarily represent political subdivisions of the state. And sheriffs are not a political subdivision of the state. Obviously, counties are, cities are, school districts are, but the sheriff's offices themselves, it's elected office, constitutional, that is not a political subdivision of the state. So that provision of the bill would not apply to the Sheriff's Association, since you don't primarily represent political subdivisions of the state. And then I think the other issue, which is the one that, I heard some last session about, was 89002, right? The provision that we added back in that explicitly allows counties to associate, even though I don't think that's completely necessary, because, counties already have lobbyists under Chapter 305 without explicit authority to do so. But, we made sure to restore that, so there's no concern there. No. But sheriffs are not political associations of the state, right?
Thank you.
Political subdivisions. Sorry. Thank you.
Senators, any other questions for the witnesses? Thank you each for being here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Chief, when you saw Wayne, of course, you knew Sheriff Wayne Dickey. I was thinking of Wayne Dickey and Tyler, the lawyer. I know 2 Wayne Dickeys, but it's good to have you, Sheriff. Thank you all. And Sheriff Cyphers, thank you for being here.
Proof we communicate. So.
Indeed. Thank you. Thank you, Sheriff. Chief is right. The chair now calls Honorable Chris Woolsey, Honorable Chris Woolsey, Honorable Stephanie Luper, Honorable Scott Bowen, Tom Forbes, and Bill Kelly. So, Councilman Chris Woolsey, Trustee Stephanie Luper, Trustee Scott Bowen, Tom Forbes, Bill Kelly, and we'll also call Susanna Hewlin. Susanna Hewlin, if you're still here and wish to testify. Very well. Welcome. Ms. Luper, good to see you. Thank you for your text earlier. Introduce yourself. Give us your testimony. Good to have you.
Thanks. My name is Stephanie Looper, and I'm a trustee for Bullard ISD. As a member of the Texas Association of School Boards, I'm here representing myself and TASB to testify in opposition of Senate Bill 175. Senator Middleton, I understand and share your concern for Texas taxpayers, which is why I'm opposing this bill today. Senate Bill 175 eliminates our ability to meaningfully advocate for our communities at the Capitol. As elected officials, we share the same taxpayers. Every time I make a decision, I ask myself two things. Is this what's best for our students, and is this what's best for our taxpayers and community? I can tell you without question, being able to effectively advocate at the Capitol is what's best and important to both constituencies. First, it ensures that y'all are passing legislation that best represents our shared constituents. Secondly, it ends up saving taxpayers money. Many trustees have jobs and families that prevent us from taking on what would be a fourth full-time job to advocate for the 140-day legislative session. Just reading the bills filed is a full-time job. Did you know there are over 900 bills that are related to public education this session? 4 of our board members are self-employed. Taking time off from work means they aren't making money to care for their families. As an oil field wife, I schedule my advocacy efforts around my husband's schedule. Bullard is a 4-hour drive, so traveling here for a short notice meeting isn't possible for me or most anyone who lives in my region. Without TASB, we'd lose our voice in those moments. Fiscally speaking, my last training trip to Austin cost my district about $900. If I were to be here for 140 days, it would cost my district well over $50,000. TASB uses about 15 to 20% of our dues for lobbying, and dues are scaled based on a district's operating budgets. For Bullard, that's about $950 in a session year. Which amount do you think my community would rather see spent? Just as you rely on staffers and interns, school boards rely on associations like TASB to provide assistance in a plethora of ways. I'm well aware there's been great discussion over TASB's advocacy agenda. As a conservative, I feel it's important for you all to understand it's developed through an exhausting grassroots process of which I was involved with this last year. I encourage all of you to ask the ISDs in your districts if they sent representatives to be involved in the process. The employees of TASB do not create the advocacy agenda. The board members that show up do. If you'd like to learn more about the process, I'd be more than happy to discuss that with any of you when I'm permitted more time. I'm most concerned with the notion that this bill was written with the intent to protect taxpayers, yet it seems it will silence the voices of school districts and their communities across the state, which is why I respectfully ask for you to oppose Senate Bill 175 so that we may continue to effectively and efficiently represent our communities. If the intent is to protect taxpayers, how does taking away their voice protect them? Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Ms. Forbes, introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Tom Forbes. I'm the president of the Professional Advocacy Association of Texas here in Austin. I'm here in opposition to Senate Bill 175. Thank you for this opportunity. Political subdivisions, like many other kinds of organizations, including private businesses and other institutions, require the assistance of accountants, lawyers, engineers, architects, insurance consultants, and other professionals. They should have and political subdivisions should have the ability to hire the professional experts that they require, even though those tasks may require that those people register under Chapter 305 of the Government Code, which is the lobby law. Full disclosure, registration, and reporting in compliance with the lobby law is more effective, in our opinion, and in greater support of the public interest than restrictions on hiring lobbyists. The legislature should not restrict the ability of elected decision makers in political subdivisions to carry out their decisions if those decisions are not supported by their constituents. Then those constituents have the democratic process to remedy that at the ballot box. Texas, as I mentioned, has a strong law regulating lobbying. That's Chapter 305 of the Government Code. This law is an effective regulatory system overseen by citizens appointed by the governor, lieutenant governor, and the speaker. which provides transparency through requirements that lobbyists register and fully disclose their clients and the issues they work on. Lastly, Professional Advocacy Association of Texas stands for compliance with the law, disclosure, ethical practice, and professionalism. Our members happily comply with whatever requirements the legislature and the Ethics Commission enact to regulate our work. In this case, however, we are certain that restricting representation will only ensure that the public will be less informed and local governments less accountable for the decisions they make. Thank you for your time, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Welcome. Introduce yourself and give us your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Scott Bowen. I'm a trustee for Clear Creek ISD at large. We're a district of 40,000 students in the Southeast Houston area. I'm here on my own time and on my own dime to support Senate Bill 175, and I'm opposed to taxpayer-funded lobbying. My school board, like all the others, is part of TASB, and TASB seems to spend 140 days every 2 years advocating for everything my constituents hate. They're opposed to educational freedom, which is a priority of this Senate. They're trying to roll back accountability and A to F grading, and they say on their website that their cornerstone principle is the promotion of equity and the intentional eradication of systemic racism. That's what they're here for. They also lobby against charter schools, despite the fact that charter schools are also part of TASB. So right now, our taxpayers are stuck spending about $19,000 a year with them, because they also provide services that we can't easily unwind. Insurance, legal services, those are hard to replace, but the lobbying is completely extraneous to all of it and is not necessary at all. And by the way, I was elected to represent my region in the grassroots agenda development process, never got a call back. So TASB does not speak for school boards, trustees, or taxpayers. It is an activist group that is attached to an insurance company that we have to use as school districts. And what they are advocating for has not been run by any of us. And then as the session goes on, they even misinform us about what you're doing and try and turn local school boards against their elected officials. So I think this conduct is unacceptable. And I really urge you to pass this legislation and put an end to it. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. And finally, on my right, introduce yourself, give us your testimony.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My name is Bill Kelly. I'm the Director of Government Relations for Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner, and here to speak against the bill. This is now my fourth time speaking in front of the legislature against efforts to prohibit local government participation in the legislative process. I specifically use the term participation because I believe that's exactly what the bill would eliminate. This morning, the City of Houston offered support for 3 bills in the Committee on Public Health on a sickle cell registry, recovery housing, and fentanyl legislation. At the exact same time, in House Business and Industry, we are monitoring first responder illness and injury policy that directly impacts our city budgets. Starting at 10 a.m., we supported legislation on affordable housing developments in House Ways and Means Committee, and later that afternoon, we supported 3 bills in the House Select Committee on youth health and safety. This bill would bar cities and counties from being able to hire the same assistants, and by that I mean lobbyists, that private businesses throughout the state hire to work with lawmakers on policies that impact their businesses. So what are we doing with our lobby teams here at the legislative session? Well, our legislative reports are easily accessible online and offer in great detail what the city's position on bills impacting city services. In fact, we have every piece of written testimony the House has submitted that Houston has submitted to the Texas legislature since 2021 online, including a copy of these remarks. This year, we're focused on a series of public safety bills, and we're proud to work with multiple members of this committee who have sponsored bills with us. These legislative proposals have been vetted by city council members. They are very bipartisan, and they help make needed changes to better serve the public. I would note that under Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner, we have put an added emphasis on advocating for increased access to mental health care, which aligns with the state's leadership's priorities. And for that, I'm very thankful. The primary organization that opposes the ability for cities to lobby is the Texas Public Policy Foundation, who has become emboldened in their misinformation. On February 2nd, they sent out a statewide email condemning local lobbying efforts, specifically saying Houstonians paid to advocate for government-controlled health care. That's a hell of a way to say we support more state funding for mental health. But that's not where their misinformation ends. The numbers cited by this dark money group come from an organization called Transparency USA. This group uses the range of dollar figures that the Texas Ethics Commission collects for lobbyists to try and calculate what local governments spend on lobbying. In Houston's case, Transparency USA quadruple counted the amount paid to our prime lobby contractor, making their final range report 2 to 4 times higher than what Houston actually spends. When alerted of this, the group refused to correct their information despite being presented with the actual contract City Council approved. For the record, Houston has a maximum spending limit of $757,000 over a 2-year period to pay for state lobby services, which is the exact same total it has been since 2011. Our state lobby contract passed on a standalone 16-1 vote, and the only speaker that came to City Hall to discuss our lobby contract stated, "I have second thoughts about eliminating taxpayer-funded lobbying. It sounds like we get a lot of benefit from the money that we spend on that." Mr. Douglas Smith, a longtime city budget observer and board member of the Houston Pachyderm Club, then invited me to speak to his group with a presentation on our state lobby work. Yes, I went to a local Republican club to talk about our lobby team and what they do, and had a very productive dialogue with a number of folks. But you're members of the Texas State Affairs Committee. You know that local government should have input on bills impacting city services. It just makes sense. Those impacts would affect local government budgets, policies, and the ability to provide services. We have a responsibility to be transparent and provide information on what we do, and I would submit that we very much do. Eliminating the ability of local governments to hire lobbyists and fully participate in the legislative conversation would diminish the quality of legislation passed by this legislature. I urge you to oppose Senate Bill 175.
Thanks for your testimony. Senators, any questions for any of our witnesses? Thank you for being here. Thank you each for being here. The chair now calls Josiah Hewlin, Paula Hilliard, Commissioner Jen Crownover, Richard Bonnert, Honorable Jennifer Henderson, Honorable Mary Bone. So we're looking for Josiah Hewlin, Paula Hilliard, Commissioner Jen Crownover, Richard Bonnert, and Treasurer Jennifer Henderson, and Trustee Mary Bone. You'll have a seat anywhere there, and we'll get started. Go introduce yourself, give us your testimony. Welcome.
My name is Richard Boner. I'm from Comfort, Texas, Kerr County, and I am for Senate Bill 175. I would like to thank you, Chairman Hughes, and the committee for your service and listening to us with our testimonies. I would also like to thank Senator Middleton for authoring this bill, Senate Bill 175. I think this taxpayer-funded lobbyist is like taxation without representation. We have no recourse at all to what these taxpayer-funded lobbyists are doing. I believe that this is a smokescreen with some of our elected officials, because they can say, well, I didn't testify that way. That came from someone else where I got the information. So I think that leaves them out for being accountable for what's happening. We have seen them come here to testify today, but when it comes to bills that they may want to be against or for, but they don't want their constituents to know their exact position, so they want lobbyists to do that for them. Also, one of the officials came up here and said they don't have the knowledge to understand these bills and don't have the time. That, to me, is their job. There's someone in there that can do that. All of the grassroots people don't get paid to come here. We come on our own dime. We take off of work, and we're not making any more money than they are. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope that you will pass this bill. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Welcome. Introduce yourself and give us your testimony.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for your time. My name is Jen Crownover, and I'm a commissioner in Comal County, Precinct 4. I'm also an officer of the County Judges and Commissioners Association of Texas and a prior president of the South Texas Association as well. Looking around at the different associations, every other trade, profession, and industry has associations, from funeral directors to truck drivers, carpenters, retailers, and realtors. Why not us? Our associations allow us to discuss among peers the impacts of, the improvements to, the application and the education of bills. The funding, which is a huge impact on us. The cost of our associations is a minuscule amount with a huge return compared to the onerous amount for counties to have to hire their own staff, duplicated 254 times, to monitor these things. Counties run a very tight ship. I do not even have a secretary. I come from a respectable sized county of 180,000 people. Our commissioners' court meetings are weekly. We prepare for those meetings and answer calls of my 45,000 constituents. I answer my own phone. Staff to serve this purpose would cost an exorbitant amount of money by each county and fall on the backs of our property tax paying residents. Without associations, there is no way we could do our job at home and do them well while effectively monitoring the thousands of bills filed and their potential impacts across our various county offices. Taking away our ability to work collectively with our peers from across the state would be devastating to counties of all sizes. The intent, I absolutely understand the noble intent and the spirit of this bill and all the potential misuses in some venues, some of which we've heard about in some egregious examples in previous testimony today on this. But this bill reduces to a very catchy bumper sticker, and no wonder there's support for it. I cannot speak for other government entities because there may be waste and misuse that created a need for a bill like this. But for counties, we've run very tight ships, and it would be crippling, devastating, and very costly to our citizens that you and I both serve. I can defend the bills that we support and oppose, and on behalf of my constituents, because they are looking for the financial and practical effects on them. Further, I can defend them even better with the money we pay to our associations as opposed to having to hire our own staff. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Sergio Menendez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me, ma'am, I didn't catch the association that you're a member of, you're an officer of.
County Judges and Commissioners Association of Texas.
So you're aware that sometimes when there's a lawsuit, some of the parties will hire an expert witness. You're aware of that, right?
Yes, sir.
Would you consider that as you're trying to take care of your commissioner's precinct in your Comal, which I drive through every day, very fast-growing part of the state, doing great, would you consider that in having an association where you can hire people who are in Austin and able to represent you as you're the experts? It's not that you can't read a bill and understand it, but it's that you're trying to take care of all your constituents, and therefore by hiring them, they can go through all 6,000 bills that have been filed and say, these are the 15 or 20 that you may need to look at. Is that?
Absolutely. And I'm willing to come and testify on those things when I know about them. And I do keep a close eye, but we've got to have that help. And hiring our own staff at the county level is just not something our budget is willing to absorb.
Would you consider yourself someone who is liberal in your spending practices or conservative?
Very conservative.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Please introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
Good evening. I'm Jennifer Henderson, the Schleicher County Treasurer, and I'm here to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 175. County officials rely on the Texas Association of Counties and our state associations to be our representative voice and to help us effectively communicate with the legislature. I have pressing fiduciary duties in my home county. that include receiving all deposits and dispersing all county funds. It is challenging for me to regularly travel to Austin to convey support or concerns on relative legislation. Schleicher County's general fund operating budget is only $3.2 million, and last year we spent just under $2,800 in dues to state associations for all elected officials and TAC combined. TAC does not take a position on legislative issues for county government, but their legislative department does help me monitor the thousands of bills that are filed every session. Over 9,000 were filed this session, and I need help keeping track of which ones could affect my office and my county. Small counties' travel budgets and staff are very limited. I have a staff of myself and one other person, and this proposed legislation feels particularly as though it could limit rural elected officials' participation at the state level. We cannot afford our own on-staff lobbyists or governmental relations officers that some urban counties have. And if the information that I am provided through both TAC and the County Treasurers Association of Texas helps prevent just one unfunded mandate from affecting Schleicher County, then I would consider those dues very well spent. Legislators do need to know the at-home impacts of the public policies that they propose, and this legislation could make it much more difficult to share these points of view with you. Thank you very much for your time.
And thank you for your testimony. And Senators, any questions for any of our witnesses? Thank you each for being here. Thank you very much. The chair now calls Ed Johnson. Ed Johnson. Judge Darrell Fowler. Judge Darrell Fowler. Trustee Chad Green. Trustee Chad Green. Ken Moore. Ken Moore. And James Quintero. James Quintero. So we're looking for Ed Johnson, Judge Darrell Fowler, Trustee Chad Green, Ken Moore, James Quintero. All right, get situated there. When you're ready, we'll start over on this side, on your right. Introduce yourself and give us your testimony. Welcome.
My name is Chad Green. I'm a trustee at McKinney ISD.
Get a little closer to the microphone. We want to hear you.
My name is Chad Green. I'm a trustee at McKinney ISD. I want to thank you for your time today and the service that you provide our community. I'm here to speak for Bill 157. I'm speaking to you today to support eliminating lobbying and taxpayer funds on behalf of any government institution. In particular with TASB. I have been fighting the pornographic books in libraries for about a year and a half, and this is being driven by the policies that TASB inputs into school districts, and trustees just say, oh, this looks great, and votes it in. I have seen this firsthand. In fact, there was a vote this summer that McKinney ISD trustees made to recommend to TASB to go out and lobby against school choice. My question to them at the time was, we haven't even seen the legislation. What, do you disagree with the legislation? What are you seeing? They didn't know a thing about any of the bills that were coming forth on choice. They were simply told by their administration, this is not good. We need to vote against this. I have been censured by my school board, and these are all TASB trained school board members. With the help of our administration, I can't actually go out onto any campus at this point in time to see what is happening on the campuses. So it's very difficult for me to hold the administration accountable for anything that's going on there. I just received a report from a parent a few weeks ago that we have brought in a guy dressed in a mermaid outfit, and it's a video, and shown it to elementary school students. So I'm very, I'm at a quandary of why this is actually happening, because this is so outside the realm of what should be normal for a child. I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus, but I don't require that of other people. What they're asking us to do, and this is being promoted by TASB, what they're asking us to do is believe in hedonism and promote hedonism in our schools. And this is all through the policies, having furries, kids dress up as animals. This is the transgender agenda, which is active. It's led by adults promoting this lifestyle to kids. I've seen it firsthand. I actually had a call before the TASB conference this last fall from a teacher saying to me, Chad, I cannot do this LGBTQ training. And I said, well, why not? And he said, well, let me show you. And so I got on a Zoom call with him, and I witnessed the entire training. And it advises the teachers not to tell the kids that the kids are confused, tell the parents that the kids are confused by their sexuality. It tells the teachers that they're to invite the child into their classroom for lunch, just they and the child. And then they're supposed to coach the child on where they can go for gender-affirming care through different clinics in McKinney. And all of that was laid out in that training. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Senator Paxton, do you have a question?
I just wanted to say thank you for coming today, Chad. I live in McKinney, and you have faced a tremendous amount of what I would call persecution for speaking up on these issues, and you've been a strong voice and advocate in a very difficult situation, and I appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Welcome. Introduce yourself and give us your testimony.
Thank you, Senator Hughes and members of the committee. I would address Senator Zaffirini, but she didn't make it back after the recess.
She's in another hearing, but her staff is watching. She'll be here shortly.
Well, thank you. My name is Darrell Fowler. I am the Constitutional County Judge of DeWitt County, Texas. I am serving in my 4th term, and I'm proud to say that I received 100% of the vote in 2022. I'm here on my own behalf as a taxpayer in my county, and I'm also representing a coalition of South Texas counties, including Atascosa, DeWitt, Gonzales, Karnes, and McMullen counties. We are all Eagle Ford Shale producing counties, and we all oppose certain elements of Senate Bill 175. We specifically oppose the provision on line 10 of the layout that would prohibit and prevent us from using public funds to employ the services of 305 registered lobbyists. And we have various reasons for that, and all good ones, at least we believe. We believe that our ability to hire a 305 registered lobbyist in 2012 made a huge impact on our ability to survive the onslaught of what is known as the Eagle Ford Shale, which is one of the highest producing severance tax plays in the whole state of Texas. Without the voice of that individual coming here and knocking on doors and making introductions for us and advising us of opportunities to testify at hearings like this, the legislation that we propose to resolve our issues and would have gone under the rug because we were not the biggest gorillas in the room. Although we have a great relationship with Texoga and TIPRO, may I have another minute, please?
Yeah, go ahead, Judge. Just kind of get to the close of your thought. We're listening to you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Texoga and TIPRO and the pipeline associations are the biggest gorillas in the room. They're here all the time. We would not have been able to pass Senate Bill 1747 in the 83rd legislature without the help of our consultant. That bill has sent $500 million of GR funds back to counties to repair the road damage caused by the oil and gas industry. Without his help in the 84th session, we would not have been able to pass House Bill 2521, which was the bill that brought back it currently $50 million worth of oil revenue that was produced under our county roads. We oppose this bill because it would silence our voice and leave nobody in the room to talk to you and educate you on these subject matters except TIPRO and the big players. And we certainly respect the duty you have to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you for your testimony. Welcome. Introduce yourself and give us your testimony.
My name is Ken Moore. I am a State Republican Executive Committee member for Republican Party, Senate District 11. I'm here to represent the SREC and the Republican voters in Senate District 11. And I'm here to testify in favor of Senate Bill 175. As this session unfolds, you're going to have many of these taxpayer-funded lobbyists coming here arguing for keeping taxes and fees in place. They're going to be arguing why one program or another should continue to be funded. They'll be arguing why one agency or another should not be subject to the Sunset Advisory Commission. Now, I am a retired machinist, and it generally costs me about $100 to come from Pearland to Austin to testify like this, round numbers, food, gas, etc. That doesn't break my bank, but it does have a significant ouch factor. When they come, they will come with tens of thousands of dollars at their fingertips to spread around. They will have an army of researchers at their disposal, and they will have expensive, beautiful publications to paint a pretty picture of whatever they're arguing for. When I come here to address you because Texas is spending too much money on things they shouldn't be, and my taxes are too high, I come with a $200 refurbished computer and whatever information I can get off of Google and news outlets. If a private company comes here to lobby, they spend their own money. When lobbyists for government entities come here, they come here using my money to spend. If a private company uses my money, that is money they got from me, they receive that money from me by selling me something that I need or want. When taxpayer-funded lobbyists get your money from me, government places a gun to my head and says, pay or we'll take your property taxes away. Anyway, I urge you to pass this bill.
Thank you for your testimony. Senators, any questions for any of our witnesses? Thank you each for being here. Thank you for sharing with us. We're listening to you. Thank you all. The chair now calls Michelle Evans, Christy Slape, Mary Krennick, Misty Odenweller, Edgar Pacheco. Again, the chair calls Michelle Evans, Christy Slape, Mary Krennick, Misty Odenweller, Edgar Pacheco. The chair calls, in addition, Caroline Welton and Lynn Davenport. So Caroline Welton, Lynn Davenport, please make your way down as well. And we'll get started. If you're ready over here on your right, introduce yourself, give us your testimony.
Good evening, Chairman Hughes, Vice Chair Paxton, and distinguished committee members. My name is Michelle Evans, and I'm the Legislative Director for Texans for Vaccine Choice. I represent myself and Texans for Vaccine Choice, and I'm testifying for the bill. Here are some quotes from a recent feature in the Dallas Morning News. Interim committee reports are reserved for factual information, not political grandstanding. Texans deserve a health committee that acts responsibly. The Senate chairwoman's report lacks intellectual rigor. The Senate committee grounded its work in misleading scientific inaccuracies. The senators are playing politics with vaccines. These sound like the words of a partisan political strategist, but they are from the mouth of Terry Burke, Executive Director of the Immunization Partnership, an organization which calls itself the voice of Texans who want to prevent disease by advocating for public policy to improve access to vaccination and permits healthcare professionals to build healthy communities. In reality, they are a taxpayer-funded lobbying group that seeks to interfere with healthy relationships between patients and healthcare professionals by advocating to subvert informed consent. Rather than simply improve access to vaccinations, they have become the marketing firm for vaccine manufacturers, helping pharmaceutical companies sell their most lucrative and only liability-free products by promoting mandates. They list among their partners Star Health Management, a Medicaid managed care program for children under the auspices of DFPS, as well as DSHS, local public health authorities, and publicly funded universities. Through these partnerships, they are able to influence public policies such as mandated medical procedures, mandated enrollment in the state's immunization database, and public disclosure of immunization rates. They do all of this not just as a government partner, but as a recipient of state and local government grants to the tune of over $150,000. Though this amount seems like a drop in the bucket, they are using these funds to publish derogatory op-eds about our duly elected legislators and push private corporations' products. We have public health agencies at every level of government in Texas. We shouldn't be spending hard-earned tax dollars on lobbyists who work to diminish our rights and increase pharmaceutical companies' profits. Thank you, and I'll take any questions.
Thanks for your testimony. Welcome. Introduce yourself.
So I learned something new. I should sign in as a trustee next time. My name is Misty Odenweller. Thank you all for the opportunity to speak to you as a resident of Montgomery County, as a taxpayer, educator, and newly elected school board trustee of Conroe ISD.
Congratulations.
Also here on my own time and dime, speaking for myself. You already have an email from 2 other trustees from my district. One of the reasons I chose to run was because the district that I was so highly sought after when I was a graduating education major from Texas A&M in '92 seemed to have had a culture shift and change where parents, students, and teachers were no longer the focus of our district. There are many things that have contributed to that change. One of the biggest is the influence and guidance of the Texas Association of School Boards, among other lobbying organizations that use our school district's memberships as power and leverage and the taxpayers' money to lobby for their agendas and not the people they are paid to represent. There are 3 key reasons why, can you tell I'm an educator? Why taxpayers' dollars funding lobbyists and why we should be in favor of stopping that. And along with 2 other trustees that demanded our district, I am one of 2 other trustees that demanded that we would not be a part of TASB. 1, I am duly elected and a representative in touch with my community, and I am obligated to do what is in the best interest of all parents, students, employees, and taxpayers. When taxpayer money is given to an organization such as TASB that represents many districts and not just ours, we are empowering an organization that is not necessarily lobbying and working in the best interest of our parents. TASB does not answer to anyone in Conroe ISD. As you heard earlier, and in joining their monopoly, we have severed the connection that is set up by the Senate for the parents, by the state for the parents and taxpayers to have a voice in what happens in their district, and someone that may answer to them for their actions. I'm almost done. 2, TASB has their own agenda and viewpoints that do not represent most of our parents and taxpayers of CISD, nor most of the state of Texas. TASB notoriously writes policies that are not in line with the values of most Texans, let alone our district. In fact, they use case law from other states to support their agenda. Then board members adopt these policies, believing it to be Texas law to move their agendas forward. Lastly, number 3, TASB trains and encourages school board members to abdicate their power assigned to them by the Texas Education Code, Chapter 11.051, to the superintendent. The superintendent is not an elected official and doesn't answer to the taxpayers. CISD parents and taxpayers do not want their taxpaying dollars going to an organization working for themselves and against the people funding them. I urge you to vote for SB 175 against tax dollar funding lobbyists such as TASB. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Welcome, even though we know you introduce yourself and give us your testimony.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Edgar Pacheco Jr., and I am in support of SB 175. Most of you know, I've worked closely with your offices, whether it's been this session, last session, to help advocate for special education legislation that impacts over 600,000 students in the entire state of Texas. Last session, I had the privilege, have the honor of working with a lot of you to help get the statute of limitations bill passed, House Bill 1252, or colloquially known as the Edgar Pacheco Jr. Act in the 87th legislature. And for the majority of my stay here in Austin last session, I was here on my own dime with the help and support of my parents. And any financial support that we received were kind contributions from other parents, other advocates across the state to help support my efforts here in the legislature last session. And that being said, currently we have the Texas Association of School Boards who currently and frequently tries to advocate against some of those pieces of legislation that will be for the benefit of not just students in special education, but in students across the entire state of Texas. And so I echo the sentiments of many of the prior testimony that have gone before me, that TASB does not represent the interests of their communities, nor do they represent the interests of students at their school districts or parents or taxpayers. As a matter of fact, they represent their own interests, their own agendas, and they do not care of the suffering that a lot of parents in special education have to go through just to obtain the necessary and appropriate services guaranteed to their children by state and federal law. And for those reasons, I urge your support for Senate Bill 175. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Welcome. Introduce yourself and give us your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Caroline Welton, and I represent the Texas Public Policy Foundation. I'm here to speak strongly in favor of Senate Bill 175. The framers of our Constitution understood the purpose of government to be the protection of life, liberty, and property rights. The Declaration of Independence says that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Unfortunately, we as a nation seem to have drifted away from this founding ideal, much to our own detriment. Here in Texas, of course, our founding approach has hewed much closer to the framers' original philosophy, but even still, there are policies and practices in effect that should concern us all, and taxpayer-funded lobbying is chief among these. Local governments today use our tax dollars to lobby for more tax dollars. That practice is not only completely at odds with Texas's limited government framework, but it is also morally suspect. Think of the words of Thomas Jefferson, who said that to compel a man to furnish funds for the propagation of ideas he disbelieves is sinful and tyrannical. This is no small issue. Earlier this year, my colleague James Quintero and I published a new study documenting that local governments spent up to $75 million in 2021 to hire lobbyists to come to Austin and advocate for more spending, higher taxes, and bigger government, a significant increase from 2017 when we determined this amount to be $41 million. I should add that these figures do not include in-house intergovernmental relations lobbyists or membership dues. These funds are spent in furtherance of things like opposing spending limits, opposing taxpayer-friendly adjustments to voter approval rate, opposing debt transparency, advocating in favor of Medicaid expansion, advocating in favor of more environmental regulation. Taxpayers should not be funding these initiatives, and they do not want to, as many polls have found. Up to 91% of Texans oppose this practice, and it is for this reason and others that I urge that this committee look favorably upon Senate Bill 175. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Senators, any questions for any of our witnesses?
Other than my name, Misty Odenweiler. Sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Odenweiler. Thank you all for being here. Thank you. You're excused. Now, those are all the witnesses that we have registered as wishing to testify on, for, or against. So come on down and take a seat. Come in here just for a moment. I'm going to ask, is anyone else here wishing to testify on, for, or against the bill? If so, we'll find out if we've got you registered.
Yeah,
Hold on.
so did I.
Hang on one second. Hey, I want to start over here. Have you already registered, sir?
Yes.
Very good. Tell us your name. Don't start your testimony, but tell us your name.
My name is Walt Smith, and I'm a county commissioner in Hays County, Texas.
Commissioner, hang on just a minute. Commissioner, after you testify, will you get with Ms. Babb and let us make sure we have you properly registered?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Before you get started, I'll just each of you the same. We're going to take your testimony. Of course, we want to hear from you. But before you leave, please check with Ms. Babb and make sure we have you each registered. So with that, Commissioner, welcome. Introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
Thank you. My name is Walt Smith. I'm Hays County Commissioner, Precinct 4. I live just across the county line from Travis County and Hays County. I was privileged enough the last 3 Republican conventions to serve on the Legislative Priorities Committee. I'm also a member of the Council of Urban Counties, the Texas County Judges and Commissioners Association, and a member of TAC. And I'm here today on behalf of myself. I'm not speaking on behalf of my county. What I want to talk about specifically today is what I believe is truly a silencing of voices of more rural counties out in Texas. At the end of the day, there's over 3,000 bills that impact my county that have been introduced just this session. And every session, this legislature, I love our members, but at the end of the day, they burden counties with literally hundreds of unfunded mandates that are pushed down to the local level. And whenever you take the ability for us to impact legislation here away, you're taking that tool out of our toolbox. You're removing the sword that my constituents and I have to try to impact and fight on their behalf. I just used one example. During the 2015 session, my county was hit with possibly the worst natural disaster we've ever had. We had a tremendous loss of life in the middle of the legislative session. Right as things came to a head, at the end of the session, we had a massive flood event. We as county commissioners, it's our job to be there for our people. It's our job to stand there and hold their hands, make sure that the infrastructure is there and the needs that they have are met on a daily basis. There's absolutely no way that if we were to do our jobs that we would be able to be here in the State House, even given the geographic location that my county has so significantly close to the Capitol. I'm here because I choose to be here probably once a week, and I do it all at my own expense. I never ask any of those organizations or the groups that I'm a member of to ever foot that bill. And I do that because my constituents depend on me to be. You know, as we look at this conversation today, if you would, I'd ask for one more minute, sir. As we look at this conversation today, I actually talked to my daughters. I've got 3 daughters, and they asked me what I was coming to talk about today. And I said, you know, I was helping them put together a new toy, of all things. And in my trying to explain this bill to them or why I'm here, you know, we've heard a lot about at least one specific organization today and why they are possibly the reason behind the introduction of this bill. And I couldn't help but draw the conclusion whenever I was helping them put this toy together that I just looked at my daughter who's 9 and I said, you know, I'm going up there, I'm putting the batteries in this toy. And I said, I'm going up there to talk about the kid that is the reason behind there being the label on this battery that says, don't eat the battery. At the end of the day, we're up here because all of us have toys. All of us have issues in front of the legislature, and we're trying to prevent some of the bad actors out there who may be the reason for this. I don't think that we need to tell all of our kids not to swallow a battery. We just need to teach that one organization not to, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Welcome. Introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
Hi, thank you. Lynn Davenport. I live in Dallas, and I ran for school board in Richardson ISD in 2017. And part of my platform was to talk about this taxpayer-funded lobbying group, TASB, because it was training my school board to not listen to the taxpayers. And so I ran a data dive, kind of a deep dive on the data and the voting in my district, because I saw where 6 years there was only one no vote, and that was kind of a no, not yet vote. So they were voting in lockstep, 7-0. They're trained by TASB to do this, and for 20 years, Dave Lieber with the Dallas Morning News has been writing about TASB. and talking about how they train them in groupthink, and it's real, especially in an at-large district, which we're now single member. But we still have issues with this, like walking quorums, and the district was sued for TOMA violations. But I want to say also they have cut and paste policies, so it removes the taxpayer's voice because they're not thinking for themselves, and there's no local. We say we want local control, but I also think we need local responsibility, and so TASB really hinders that ability. And you make some really good points. This is why I told you, Senator Middleton, I didn't want it to be mixed in with all these other groups. We need to nail TASA and TASB, and so I hope that doesn't impede or it doesn't affect the bill's ability to pass, because we have to do this. We've got to make our independent school districts independent. So, I understand what you're saying, but in the end, we've got to get the lobbyists out. And if that means maybe we just have to engage the people more. Maybe we start anew, and it forces the districts to have to go to their people and say, hey, we've got this issue in Austin. Will you show up and help us to lobby? Okay, I think that's it.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Welcome. Introduce yourself and give us your testimony.
My name is Mary Lowe, and I'm here representing myself. I'm from Colleyville, Texas. I'm also representing the organization Families Engaged for Effective Education. One of the prime examples of abuse by a taxpayer-funded lobbyist is TASB, and that message has been very loud and very clear. And it does seem that the most egregious abuse does occur in the education arena. However, I believe the bill has great merit based on the fact that taxpayers typically align themselves with one political ideology or another. When there's an organization that represents their ideology, it is an abuse of the taxpayer who is funding it. One of the things that I would like to call to your attention is this past year as an example of TASB. They taught the school districts literally how to subvert the law that you had just passed in this last district, SB 3. They use this over and over again. They subvert the laws very intentionally. They use law firms such as Walsh and Gallegos to penetrate school districts at the administration and the school board level through education service centers, through TASA, and through TASB. So it undermines the voters, it undermines the taxpayer. It is, as previously said, taxation without representation. But more than that, there are more than 900 bills. And if parents can be brought to a place where they're keeping up with the bills that are affecting their child's education, then every other industry can too. Lobbyists undermine our form of government, where you are a representative form of government. So I would like to see you pass Senate Bill 175, and thank you for authoring it. I appreciate it.
And thank you for your testimony. So if there's any questions for any of our witnesses, thank you each for being here. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else present wishing to testify on, for, or against Senate Bill 175? Very well, public testimony is closed, and the bill is left pending at this time. That's right. The chair now lays out Senate Bill 15, and recognizes its author, Senator Middleton, to explain the measure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Senate Bill 15 comes down to one thing: fairness. Fairness for something that generations of women have fought for, which is the opportunity to compete in college sports. Unfortunately, that opportunity to fairly compete in college sports for women is in jeopardy, and Title IX protections that have been so hard and so long that we have fought for are being eroded away. America is about equality of opportunity, which is why protecting the integrity of Title IX is so important. This bill helps ensure that hard-earned victories, athletic records, spots on teams, scholarships for our women athletes in college, and name, image, likeness sponsorships are protected by requiring that athletes in our public institutions of higher education do not compete on a team that is designated for the biological sex opposite of the student athlete's biological sex. Additionally, the bill protects women athletes from retaliation by an institution of higher education or by an intercollegiate athletic team for reporting or whistleblowing on a violation of this bill. Biological men are physiologically different than women. Adult males are on average 4.5 inches taller, have a larger and denser skeletal structure. Adult males on average have 36% greater muscle mass, jump 25% higher, throw 25% further, run 11% faster, accelerate 20% faster, and males on average are 30% stronger than females of equivalent stature and mass. Members, when we consider the physiological differences between men and women in the context of athletic competitions, biological men and women cannot fairly compete against each other, and that invariably takes away opportunity for female athletes. Teddy Roosevelt had a famous quote about the man in the arena daring greatly. What about the woman in the arena? We all hope every woman in this state has a fair opportunity at athletic excellence through achievement, and this bill protects that opportunity. I have a daughter. I hope for Martha Ann's sake that she has a fair chance and equality of opportunity to put in the hard work for her own athletic excellence through achievement. The next generation of women will likely not enter the arena at all if they do not think it's fair. Why would they make that sacrifice? As a legislature, we have taken the first step towards protecting fair competition for women already in passing protections for girls K through 12 sports. Now it is time to take the next step so fairness for female athletes is protected at all levels, and finish the other half of the equation to protect all female sports. Students should compete on athletic teams based on their biological sex, and you can't have fair competition when women are forced to compete against biological men. The committee substitute that we're going to pass out is just a ledge council version with no substantive changes. And with that, Mr. Chairman and members, I yield for questions and also testimony as well that we have today.
Thank you, Senator Middleton. Senator Menendez, did you have questions for the author?
I do.
You're recognized. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sir Middleton, I think you had mentioned that the necessity for this is because, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but why do you feel it's necessary again? Is it because you feel that trans people would have an advantage physically? Or that's what I'm trying to figure out.
This is a fairness issue. Just fundamentally, we can go and talk about the physiological differences as a fairness issue, so maybe that's perhaps the best place to start. One example is the world record for men's 100-meter dash is 9.58 seconds compared to the women's world record of 10.48 seconds. Of course, you're going to hear in a little bit from Riley Gaines where Leah Thomas was 462nd place as a male, became first place competing as a female. And obviously, Martina Navratilova is a huge advocate for this issue because of the fairness aspect to it and the difference in the biological differences between males and females. We know up to about age 10, it's pretty similar. Boys and girls up to that age it's not a lot different, but then it begins to diverge at that point. And we have a lot of examples here. The Mayo Clinic said that there are social aspects to sport, but physiological and biology underpin it. So physiology and biology underpin it. So I have some more data here that I can go through if you'd like, but at the end of the day, it's really a fairness issue. And it's also making sure that we're faithfully upholding Title IX, which was passed about 51 years ago now, right? So that was passed as a fairness issue to make sure women had the opportunity to compete in a number of areas. And what this bill really does is reaffirm Title IX.
So I understand what you're saying. My thoughts are that everyone's bodies are kind of on a bell curve. And so I think what you're saying, if I heard you correctly, is that you feel that male-born athletes are at an advantage over female-born athletes, is what I'm hearing you say. Do you have any concerns? Because my understanding, I know that the bill says it's got a fiscal note of 0, but are you aware of the NCAA statement in 2021 where it says inclusion and fairness can coexist for all student athletes, including transgendered athletes at all levels of the sport? NCAA statement said that their, quote, our clear expectation as the association's top governing body is that all student athletes will be treated with dignity and respect, and we're committed to ensuring that the NCAA championships are open for all who earn the right to compete in them. My concern is that if this bill passes into law, that potentially we would lose the ability to host NCAA championships. Not all of them are as well attended, but as you may be aware, the Final Four has brought in millions of dollars to the state of Texas. Do you have any concerns about that?
Right. So that'll be happening in March. So coming up pretty soon. And obviously the NCAA was aware that this was going to be a big priority of the Texas legislature. And we have 14 states that have passed a bill similar to this, of course not exactly like this, including our neighbors to the north, Oklahoma, and our neighbor to the east, Louisiana. So those 14 states have not seen any retaliation so far, right? And I have spoken with the NCAA as well. They actually didn't even submit public comment in the proposed Title IX rules changes. They did not. And there was like 230,000 comments, and the NCAA was not one of them. And their bylaws, at the end of the day, end up being guidelines a lot of the times, because you look at the NCAA Constitution, and the NCAA Constitution says that they have to follow federal, state laws, and local ordinances, right? Mm-hmm. So if this becomes law, then per their Constitution, they're going to have to follow it. And, with the 14 states ahead of us on this particular issue, we have not seen that retaliation. We have not seen a loss of opportunity. We've not seen potential threats. That just hasn't happened.
So it's my understanding that Title IX specifically prohibits discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity. I'm not sure if you've researched that, but that's my understanding.
I think you're referring to the Bostock decision. Is that?
I'll need to look it up, but my understanding is that that's what Title IX is upholding, that they should not have any gender discrimination or identity discrimination. So I'll be listening to the witnesses and reading your committee substitute. So I appreciate you answering my questions. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Senator.
Thank you, Senator Menendez, and thank you, Senator Middleton. Any other questions? All right. If not, then what we will do is we will go on and we have some invited witnesses, and the chair calls Riley Gaines, Jerry Shanteau, and Jade Dickens. Appreciate all of you being here. Go on and have a seat. And I guess, Riley, if you don't mind getting started, introduce yourself to us, state your name, and then give us your testimony.
Of course. Thank you, Chairwoman Paxton and distinguished members of the Senate Committee on State Affairs. My name is Riley Gaines, and I am a spokeswoman for the Independent Woman's Voice, and I urge you to pass Senate Bill 15. I recently graduated from the University of Kentucky, where I was a student and a member of University of Kentucky's women's swim and dive team. I proudly finished my career as a 12-time NCAA All-American, a 5-time SEC champion, an SEC record in the 200 butterfly, making me one of the fastest Americans of all time, and a 2-time Olympic trial qualifier. But all of that to say that being successful at an elite level is far from easy, and it's a lifelong journey. It's impossible to put into words the amount of time and the dedication and the sacrifices that I've made. I started swimming when I was 4, so I've spent 18 years of my life achieving maximum performance in my sport, which is not unique to just myself when competing at the collegiate level. On March 17th of 2022, my teammates and I, as well as female swimmers from universities around the country, were forced to compete against biological male Leah Thomas. Thomas was allowed to compete in the women's division after competing at the University of Pennsylvania's men's swim team for 3 years prior. The first day of competition, we watched on the side of the pool as Thomas swam to a national title in the 500 freestyle, beating out the most impressive and accomplished female swimmers, including many U.S. Olympians and American record holders, by body lengths at that. And I think it's important to mention, like Senator Middleton said, Thomas was ranked 462nd at best the year before in the men's division. That next day, Thomas and I raced in the 200-yard freestyle, which almost impossibly enough resulted in a tie. We went the exact same time down to the 100th of a second. And so having only one trophy, the NCAA handed the trophy to Thomas and told me I had to go home empty-handed because Leah had to hold the trophy for photo purposes. I felt betrayed and belittled, and like my efforts and the sacrifices that I had made had been reduced to a photo op to validate the identity and the feelings of a male. But my feelings did not matter. But that is not all. In addition to being forced to give up our awards and our titles and our opportunities, the NCAA forced female swimmers to share a locker room with Thomas, a 6'4", 22-year-old male equipped with and exposing male genitalia in a room full of vulnerable, undressed women. Let me be clear. We were not forewarned about this arrangement. We did not give our consent, and we were not asked for our consent. And if nothing else, I truly hope you can see how this is a violation of our right to privacy and how some of us have felt uncomfortable, awkward, embarrassed, and even traumatized by this experience. Of course, Title IX was enacted to end discrimination on the basis of sex within colleges and universities, but by allowing Thomas to displace female athletes in the pool and on the podium, the NCAA intentionally and explicitly discriminated on the basis of sex. And although the NCAA claimed it acted in the name of inclusion, its policies, in fact, excluded female athletes, which, of course, are the very athletes Title IX was passed to protect. It's impossible to speak for every single girl on that pool deck, but I can wholeheartedly attest to the tears I saw from the 9th and 17th place finishers who missed out on being named an All-American by one place. And I can wholeheartedly attest to the extreme discomfort in the locker room from 18 to 22-year-old girls who were exposed to male body parts and having to undress with a male in the same room. And I can attest to the grumbles of anger and frustration from these girls who, like myself, had worked so hard and sacrificed so much to get to that moment. And on top of that, I can attest to the fact that around the country, female athletes who protested the inclusion of Leah Thomas in the women's division were threatened, intimidated, and emotionally blackmailed into silence and submission. I am 100% certain that I speak for more than just myself when I'm sharing my testimony before you guys. But unfortunately, my experience is not unique, and that is why I ask you guys to please pass Senate Bill 15 today. The number of female athletes who have been denied opportunities, traumatized, or hurt by policies that claim to promote inclusion is growing at an alarming rate. It's simply unacceptable, and the integrity of women's sports is lost. And so I appreciate the opportunity to share my experience, and I hope that you consider the facts, the science, and the growing numbers of stories. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony, for sharing your story with us today. Senator Middleton.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Riley, maybe one thing I'd like to hear more about here is what are some more examples that you've seen of retaliation or threats because you've spoken up or others have spoken up?
Absolutely. I have seen this, of course, from the athletes. I have seen retaliation against parents, and I have seen retaliation against the administration within universities and even at the NCAA. After all of this kind of happened, I had several of Leah Thomas's teammates reach out to me. They informed me of what they went through on a daily basis, including going to mandatory LGBTQ meetings to learn about the oppression that Leah Thomas faced. When they were concerned about the locker room aspect, they sent an email to their administration, and I swear I have a screenshot of their response. The administration responded with, "If you feel uncomfortable seeing male genitalia, here are some counseling resources that you should seek." And then again, we're referred to the campus LGBTQ Education Center to educate themselves. They were told that they were not allowed to take a stance because the school has taken their stance for them. They were told, you will never get into grad school, you will never get a job, you will lose your friends, you will not have the ability to continue playing on this team if you speak out. And that, again, is happening across the nation from girls in my same position, which is why there are so few of us who are willing to really use our voice. In regards to the parents, I have so many parents reach out to me who say, I support you privately, but I have a corporate job, and I'm told I can't publicly share my support. Within the administration, I actually went down to San Antonio for the NCAA convention where they announced their 2022 NCAA Woman of the Year, to which I was nominated for. But it was not exclusive to just women being nominated for Woman of the Year because Leah Thomas was also nominated. And so actually we bought a booth inside the convention center where athletic directors were able to walk by. And every single athletic director who walked by said, hey, thank you for doing what you're doing. You know, we can't publicly support you, but keep fighting. Even the president of the NCAA himself, Mark Emmert, approached me and said, keep fighting, you know, we need you to keep going, which is ironic because he is the one we are fighting against. I had the meet occurred at Georgia Tech, and so I actually had one of the host reps of the meet at Georgia Tech reach out to me and share with me some emails that they got from the NCAA before the competition was allowed, stating that they were not allowed to share how they felt publicly, whether it was for in support or against allowing trans athletes to compete with women. So I'm seeing this on all levels, parents, athletes, and within the administration.
Thank you, Senator Middleton. Thank you. Members, are there any other questions? All right, if not, thank you for your testimony. And if you need to go, my understanding is you might have somewhere you need to head to, but you're welcome to stay until the panel's over.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good job, girl.
All right, if you'd introduce yourself and share your testimony with us.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Good evening, Chairman Paxton and members of the committee. My name is Jerry Shanto. I am from Austin, Texas, and I am here today testing in favor of Senate Bill 15. I was a competitive swimmer for 17 years. During my career, I achieved 3 NCAA Division I national championships and 11 All-American honors. I represented the United States national team and earned a silver medal at the World Championships in 2005. These achievements were possible because I competed in a fair and equal playing field against other biologically born women. Today, other women do not have this opportunity. Instead, biologically born women are required to compete against transgender women with male bodies. The institutions, universities, and governing bodies for whom they compete expect them to simply accept this injustice, challenge and gracefully submit to a new reality in which women are once again marginalized. Athletics are not demonstrating progress by allowing male bodies to compete in women's sports, but quite the opposite. Athletics is digressing and seemingly asking women to sit idly by. The consequences of this environment are real and include psychological and emotional turmoil for biologically born women, and they will be long-lasting. These consequences will span generations of female athletes, and with that, the inevitable truth: female sports will become extinct if we continue this trajectory. These social gender issues have no place in sport. Separate male and female competitive sport are about ensuring half the population, girls and women, have equal opportunities to participate, set records, earn college scholarships, prize money, podium spots, and equal honor and respect due to their athletic accomplishments. Not to mention other intangible benefits of competition and athletic success, such as confidence, camaraderie, professional networks, and other future gains. Sex segregation ensures equal opportunity for biologically born women in sport. The male's body advantage takes our experience as women and is oppressive once again. It forces us to confront our disadvantages in the most misogynistic way possible. The female category is not small or weak. We are physically made different than men and should not be asked to compare our differences in sport. We are equal, but we are not the same, and those differences are why we must have sex separation in sport. If the rights, position, and body of the female sex in our society is one that is truly celebrated and participates with an equal voice, then male bodies competing and taking the place of biological women should never be allowed. 1 year ago, I watched with my own eyes as Leah Thomas, a trans woman competing with a male body, was allowed to compete at the Women's Division I Swimming and Diving National Championships. Leah was allowed to take titles, experiences, and opportunities away from many women, and in doing so, changed the course of those young women's lives. Just last month, a male-bodied diver took the place of a female-born athlete at Women's NCAA Qualifying Conference Championship Final, therefore excluding women from recognition they had earned and denying them the experience to compete at NCAAs. In only 17 years since I last competed, the opportunity for biologically born girls and women to earn a college scholarship, represent their country, and to win titles and earn awards based on their athleticism is disappearing. I am not only a former elite athlete in mourning, but I am also a scared mother to a 9-year-old daughter. If we continue to diminish the protection of sex-segregated sport, I will have to look at my daughter and tell her that no matter how hard she works and no matter how hard she tries, a male body with its biological advantages will beat you, and it is within the rules to do so. I will have to tell her that her government, her institution, her community does not value her femaleness, that they do not protect her. We are on the precipice of a long and tragic fall for women's sport if we do not act now. So I beg you to consider how we can save girls and women in sport. I ask you to ponder the outcome of valuing gender identity over sex identity in sport. While socially there may be a place for it, there is not and should never be a place for gender identity in competitive sport. Women need you to fight for them like they've been fighting for decades, centuries. We cannot afford to go backward. We need laws like Senate Bill 15 to protect biologically born women's safety, privacy, and right to fairness in sport. We need you to help ensure that little girls all over the world continue to participate, continue to compete, and continue to have an equal opportunity to rise to the top in their sport. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
As a mother of 3 daughters, I appreciate it very much. Are there any questions, members? All right, if not, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Thank you for having me. This is my 4th time to be here, and I would hope that I have the ability to make an impact each time that I'm here. My name is Jade Dickens. I am a 20-plus year female strength competitive athlete. I participate in powerlifting, strongman, moss wrestling, and arm wrestling. So I have a humongous gamut of experience in the athletic world. At this point in time, of course, I do pay to play because I live in one of the greatest countries in the world. I have the ability to go out and sign up for any sport that I want to and pay the membership and show up and do the best that I can. I have a medal. I brought it today mainly to symbolize this. I'm not dusting this off. This was one Saturday. As I competed, I received a text message from Mary Elizabeth that asked, "Jade, we're talking about this again. Can you come?" I said, "Absolutely. I'll be there." And here I am. And I brought this to represent, had a man stepped into my playing arena at my same age. I am 49. I am one of the top bench pressers in the world. If a man of my age, my size, who had been training for over 20 years, had stepped into my arena with me, he would have taken me out soundly. I benched this weekend 345 pounds. The common average male benches 315. That is my size. Now, as we were talking about on the bell curve, if he trained the 20 years that I have trained, he would be benching between 700 and 800 pounds. I can't compete with that. So what is one of the things that I want to really and truly ask of the committee is find out why this has taken place. Why do men have to step into female sports? Why are men not able to be accepting of a man in a dress that wants to wear makeup and still allow him to compete in the sport he wishes to compete in? Why are women being forced to accept this? I did not know that Riley was going to be here today. She's actually part of my speech. Texas Penal Code 21.08, indecent exposure. He is reckless about whether another person is present who will be offended or alarmed by his act. What Leah Thomas did by exposing himself in that locker room is punishable by law, by our own Texas law, meaning that the people that allowed him to do that by proxy could also be punished by Texas law. That's how serious this is for women, and that men and administrators are not taking this seriously. I am an athlete for USAPL. I'm not here representing USAPL. I am only a member. And if anybody knows, we just lost a lawsuit in Minnesota. The court's comment for the reasoning for favoring on J.C. Cooper's side was increased risk of depression and suicide, lack of access to coaching and practice facilities, or other performance suppression common to transgender persons as competitive disadvantages for transgender competitors. These are the same issues that women have been dealing with for centuries. Why is it that 1% of the population is allowed to have this much attention and to be forced into 55% of the population's private spaces? Why? If the issue is truly about acceptance, why does it fall to women to be the one that has to be the one to accept the change? Why can't men accept some men want to dress and be more feminine. Women are accepting to other women that wish to present as men. Women's sports are for biological women. We have no advantage. You don't see the other way around. You don't see trans going from female to male, demanding to be placed in sports, or demanding to go into locker rooms, or demanding to go into bathrooms. Why is that? Ask yourself why. Why do we as women have to accept this? Thank you for your time, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Members, are there any questions? Senator Middleton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Jay, if maybe you could talk about kind of, you said 20 years, you've been competing for 20 years. How much has gone into that? How much time, sacrifices? I think that's the thing that sometimes gets lost in all of this, is to pursue these opportunities. And when you started pursuing them, you assume fairness. What other opportunities did you give up, right? I mean, that's one of the things that is really not discussed that often in this issue, where it's a sacrifice, to compete at an elite level. And it's something that takes many, many years of work to be able to achieve that elite level that you have and everyone testifying here today. So
absolutely. I train 3 to 4 days a week, 2 to 3 hours at a time. That's pretty standard, but that also takes away from family time. My family is good enough to me to know that this is my hobby. I've actually declined promotions because I knew that a promotion would mean more time spent at work, and that would mean less time in the gym and less time with my family. Powerlifting has allowed me to travel internationally. I have represented the United States in 10 different countries. I've been able to expose my whole family to different cultures, to different ways of the world, just because of my hobby. Not because of my work or my career, but because of my hobby. And it's something that I truly love and don't ever plan on stopping. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you, Senator Middleton, for your question. Thank you both so much for coming to share your story with us. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Those are our invited witnesses. So the chair will now open public testimony on Senate Bill 15. And the chair calls Jana Long, Mary Smith, Noel Fitchard, thank you, and Clayton Travis, and Angela Martinez. Okay, one more time. Angela Martinez, Clayton Travis, Noel Fitchard, Mary Smith, and Jana Long. All right. Why don't you go on and get started? Well, let me just ask your name first.
My name is Noel Fitchett.
Okay, Noel, if you don't mind holding just a second, I'm going to go on and call some other folks. The chair calls Cindy Castilla, Ash Hall, Liz Case Pickens, and Thomas Shanbean. There we go, full house. Thank you all for coming and for staying. Appreciate you being here and look forward to hearing your testimony. We'll start on this side, and if you'll state your name for the record and give us your testimony, please.
Sure. Let me pass that up then. Okay. Great. Thanks for having me. My name is Ash Hall. I am against the bill. I represent myself and the ACLU of Texas. Last session, after 3 failed attempts, the legislature debated and passed House Bill 25, an anti-trans law that also purported to save women's sports. And rather like this bill, instead of saving women's sports, the law guaranteed that basically 1% of the population couldn't participate in school sports. And apparently that wasn't enough for people, so we are back here again. So I want to outline the worst impact of that law and the debates leading up to it, since the effects of our debate here and on this bill will likely be very similar. That impact being the mental health of transgender Texas youth and indeed LGBTQ youth in this state as a whole. So the Trevor Project, an LGBTQ plus suicide prevention organization, surveyed LGBTQ plus Texas youth in 2022, right after session, and found that 47% of them seriously considered suicide in the past year. 72% experienced symptoms of anxiety, 59% experienced symptoms of depression, and 86% of them reported that recent politics negatively impacted their well-being. And I bring that up because I've heard this body comfort itself before with the notion that there's no blood on its hands with regards to bill like SB 15 or the entire slew of bills we have targeting transgender Texans' ability to participate in everyday life. This data should prove otherwise, and it should prove that anti-transgender legislation is dangerous and our lives should not be up for debate. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. State your name and give us your testimony, please.
Hi, my name is Noelle Fitchett. I would like to thank Senator Mays Middleton for presenting SB 15 and for the opportunity to appear before you today. My name is Noelle Fitchett, and I'm a former athlete, Texas A&M graduate student, and an ambassador for Young Women for America, a project of Concerned Women for America, the nation's largest public policy women's organization. Over these past few years, I've witnessed the injustice towards women in our sports and the increasing effort to erase women and the opportunities we have desperately fought to receive. As a former high school soccer player and competitive dancer, I'm thankful for the current Texas law that protects girls' sports by ensuring biological males cannot compete on female teams in K-12 education. Women should be protected on every level, including college. After decades of fighting for equality, it is incomprehensible to me that we again have to defend women's most basic civil rights of equal opportunity and protection. I'm here as a woman who believes that superficial characteristics or personal expressions do not define womanhood. Rather, we are defined by our distinct, immutable biological differences and the dignity ascribed to us by God. Without sex-based sports categories, female athletes will no longer have equal opportunities in sports. Men are faster, have larger hearts, lungs, increased muscle mass and strength, stronger bones, different skeletal structures, and are inherently more competitive and aggressive. Studies have shown a 10 to 12 performance gap between elite male and female athletes. In 2017, Olympic world and U.S. champion Tori Bowie's 100-meter lifetime best of 10.78 seconds was beaten 15,000 times by men and boys. Allowing men and women's sports is an outrage and a betrayal of women's rights. This is discrimination towards women in the 21st century. This is an attack on the progress we've made as a society, an attack on science, on women, and who God created us to be. If we do not protect female sports, there will be no female title holders, college champions, or world champions. It is for this reason that Senate Bill 15 should be passed in order to protect the integrity of female college athletes. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony.
Okay. Hi, I'm Cindy Castilla.
Please. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman Paxton and Senator Middleton, for this bill, and committee members. My name is Cindy Castilla. I'm testifying for Texas Eagle Forum and myself. Thank you for this opportunity to publicly support SB 15. Anywhere you search, and we're all coming up with the same numbers over and over and over, for information on bodily differences of biological females and males, you find similar data. It's all just true. We're very different. Only 1 in 20 females has the strength of the same age average male. Females have smaller hearts, less lung capacity, and hips that make running less efficient than the hips of a male. Females have fewer red blood cells for oxygenation. Male eyes track an approaching object better than those of most females. Like, we get hit more often by the ball. We have historically separated males and females in sports by the time they reach high school for good reason. When a biological male joins a girls' sports team, statistics show he will present stronger than 95% of the females trying out. A female will lose her spot to him, whether it be on the team or on the podium, and she could also lose a scholarship. This is a fairness issue for females. Having biological males on a girls' team creates locker room and travel and housing issues, and this is a privacy issue for the females. Thank you for supporting safety, fairness, and privacy for females who participate in collegiate sports. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. If you'd state your name and then give us your testimony, please.
Good evening. I'm Liz Case Pickens, and I am in support of SB 15. This is my 7th hearing on this issue, and I've listened to a lot of experts testify about the differences between males and females. When you listen to athletes and coaches and parents, what you hear is them talk about how girls' sports will be destroyed entirely if this is allowed to continue. We've had several athletes come before us and testify that their coaches have told them they would gladly field an entire team of transgender athletes instead of girls because it gives them a much better ability to win. And we all know that coaches are evaluated on their record. So our girls' sports opportunities would disappear. If you listen to the psychologists, they will talk about the things that are important to girls as far as when their dreams are crushed, to be able to compete, when they lose their scholarships. That is a very important issue for many of our girls, particularly those of low income. They are not somebody that needs to be discriminated against by losing their spots. These are all things that are important to me as a former educator, but to me, as a parent, I have 4 children, and 3 of them were girls, and they were athletes. To me, the safety issue is the most important thing. If you think about their safety on the court, if you think about their safety in the bathrooms, in the showers, these are issues that have got to be considered. My kids are grown, but I've got 2 granddaughters that are girls that may someday wish to compete. When Title IX was passed in 1972, it was an issue of protection for women. Please don't ask them to go to the back of the bus now, after 50 years.
Thank you for your testimony. If you'd state your name for the record and give us your testimony, please.
Thank you, Vice Chair Paxton and Mays Middleton and esteemed members of the committee. I'm Thomas Schoenbein, Pasadena City Councilman in District H, representing myself and also my constituents. Should males identify as athletes as transgenders compete in women's sports? That's the question. We need to hear and learn from Raleigh's story, not a collegiate athlete, Leah Thomas, a male swimmer from the University of Pennsylvania, who won the NCAA Women's Championship in the 500-yard freestyle in March of 2022. CeCe Telfer, a transgender male runner, won the NCAA Division II National Championship in the women's 400-meter hurdles in 2019. In today's world, it is difficult to imagine that there was a time when women and girls didn't have many opportunities to play sports. Before the 1970s, women in sports, it wasn't widespread. In fact, sporting events for females were almost non-existent. During the 71-72 school year, only 7% of high school athletes were females. Today, by comparison, females make up over 45% of all high school athletes. I take issue with transgender athletes competing in women's sports. There is no equity allowing males to compete with women. Allowing biological males to compete in women's sports gives an unfair advantage to talented, gifted, and extremely hardworking female athletes. The hopes, goals, and dreams of far too many girls and women are being shattered. The whole reason sports have always been separated by biological sex is because of the obvious, undeniable, significant physical differences between men and women. The truth is, males are built differently than females. Men have a physical advantage after their bodies go through puberty, which makes competing against women unfair and also dangerous. When we allow biological males to compete against biological females, these differences give transgenders athletes an unfair advantage that biological girls and women simply can't overcome. No matter how hard they train, no matter how much time and effort they pour into their sports, no matter how great the sacrifices they make to do their best, they can't overcome the biological differences. This is why we have separate men's and women's sports. But somehow the line between the two has become increasingly blurry, and women and girls are suffering the consequences. On a personal note, I want my granddaughter and all other biological females to have equal opportunity to compete fairly in the great state of Texas. Say no to men competing in women's sport. I support SB 15. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Members, are there any questions for the witnesses? If not, thank you. I appreciate you coming, staying around to share your stories. Thank you. All right. The chair calls Jacqueline Murphy, Susanna Carranza, Darren Keys, Fran Rhodes, and Karen Marshall. Jacqueline Murphy, Susanna Carranza, Darren Keys, Fran Rhodes, and Karen Marshall.
3 out of 5 ain't bad.
No, 4 out of 5, actually. And I think I may call one more. David Stout. Okay. All right. Let's go on and get started. And in the interest of efficiency, so that we move people through a little more quickly, we'll go on and have everyone give their testimony, and then we'll ask questions at the end, if that's all right with everyone and members. All right. If you give us your name for the record, and we look forward to hearing your testimony.
I'm Dr. Susanna Carranza, and I oppose Senate Bill 15. I see many of you here are listed as co-authors of this bill. Actually, a lot of you are not even here. Is that really what our elected officials should be spending time on? Like, really? Spending our resources further marginalizing a group of Texans that is already marginalized? Like, really? You think encouraging students to report their peers because they suspect they may be transgender will promote the kind of friendship we all hope to form in college? Like, really? Do you think that preventing transgender athletes from playing sports somehow protects women? You really think that? By the way, what happens if a trans man decides to follow this law and compete in a women's team? Like, wouldn't the testosterone of the treatment give them an advantage? So how does that protect women? I urge you to oppose this bill. It does nothing to protect women. If you really want to protect women, pass red flag laws. Allow women to make reproductive choices. Support equal pay for equal work. This bill has nothing to do with fairness. This bill has everything to do with prejudice. Please oppose this bill. Thank you. If you have any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. If you'd state your name and give us your testimony, please.
Good evening, Chairwoman Paxton and members of the committee. My name is Darren Keys, and I'm Senior Counsel with Alliance Defending Freedom. I'm here on behalf of myself and ADF, and we're in support of the bill. Our firm represents female athletes in West Virginia, Connecticut, Idaho, and other states in federal court who have personally lost out on championships and other athletic opportunities to males who were permitted to compete in female sports. That is why 18 states have acted to protect fairness in women's sports before young women start losing medals or spots on the team. These states want to attract and retain the best women athletes to their colleges with a guarantee that they will never lose their spot on a team to a male competitor. And none of those states have experienced any economic consequences for doing so. No lost NCAA tournaments, no boycotts, and no businesses leaving their states. Protecting fairness for women athletes fully aligns with both the U.S. Constitution and federal law. The U.S. Supreme Court has held that schools and colleges can maintain separate programs for men and women based on, quote, physiological differences between male and female individuals. Other federal courts have held the same, that states and schools can preserve female sports opportunities exclusively for female athletes. The path is legal, logical, and long-standing. Simply put, the Constitution and federal law fully support Texas passing SB 15 and protecting fairness in sports for our daughters and granddaughters. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. If you'd state your name for the record, and then we look forward to hearing your testimony.
Hello, my name is Karen Marshall, and I represent myself and the State Republican Executive Committee. Tennis was my sport in high school and middle school and into college. I practiced hard to earn and keep a place on my high school's varsity team. I wasn't top tier. I was spot 8 out of 8 places on the girls' varsity team. But I earned it and held it and competed in tournaments with my team. By high school, all the varsity boys were stronger and hit the ball harder and faster than we did among the girls. They slammed their serves probably at about 80 miles an hour and could get a tennis ball wedged in the chain link fence from 2 courts away. Getting hit by one of their shots would have left a bruise. If any of them could have switched teams to the girls' side to compete for a place, the reality is they would have knocked me off the team. Harvard biologist Carol Hooven reports that people born male have testosterone levels around 25 times those of pubertal females, providing them an athletic advantage over people who have not experienced male puberty. Serena Williams says male tennis star Andy Murray would beat her easily if she played against him. Across the board, it is the same. At age 15, boys beat girls in the 30-meter dash by more than 4 seconds on average. At age 42, Laurel Hubbard is the first transgender to compete in the Olympics, beating born women for a place on the New Zealand weightlifting team. Competing against female lifters in the 192-pound lifting category, Laurel is ranked 15 in the world. Anna Van Bellingham, a Belgian weightlifter who will be competing against Hubbard this summer, says this particular situation is unfair to the sport and to the athletes. Multi-gold medalist swimmer Michael Phelps held a 12.6% advantage over the women's gold medalist Austrian Petria Thomas. After women's equality taking millennia to achieve, women are now expected to move graciously aside to let trans athletes into women's sports. Girls and women should not have to give up their hard-won sports opportunities, and I implore you to vote in favor of SB 15.
Thank you for your testimony. Thanks for being here, and if you would state your name for the record, and we look forward to hearing your testimony.
Hello, I'm Jacqueline Murphy, and I'm representing myself as a college student, a trans woman, and the official slowest runner on my high school cross-country team. And I'm going to be talking about some issues facing college women's sports. Eating disorders are rampant in student athletics. The exact numbers are difficult to measure, but several studies have reported between 1/4 and 1/2 of female athletes exhibiting clinical or subclinical eating disorder behaviors. Many of these female athletes experience something called a female athlete triad, which constitutes disordered eating, loss of bone density, and amenorrhea, which is the disruption of the healthy menstrual cycle due to insufficient nutrients and is incredibly common and normalized among female student athletes. I personally know several who have experienced it. Amenorrhea puts female athletes at a high risk of stress fracture, osteoporosis, and chronic injury. In addition to health issues, female athletes receive less than 30% of NIL deals, resulting in a significant pay gap. And even when not making money, student athletes report extremely high rates of abuse and harassment from authority figures on campus. This bill, which is in no doubt being pushed under the guise of protecting women's sports, accomplishes nothing for college sports and is aimed at making trans people feel unsafe in public life. There are almost no trans individuals playing at the college level. A few examples have been named here, mainly Leah Thomas, who herself tied with Riley and has lost frequently. And even if trans people are playing in college, they are subject to strict NCAA regulations, ensuring fair play without the needless overreach of state government. Trans people are required to take extensive courses of hormone therapy that essentially eliminate the biological advances mentioned by Senator Middleton and others. Trans athletes are a non-issue, and if this committee prioritizes this bill over the real massive issues facing collegiate athletes, you do not care about protecting women's sports, you care about hurting trans people as part of a disgusting ideological agenda. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. If you would state your name and give us your testimony, please.
Good evening, Chairman and members. My name is David Stott. I'm an El Paso County Commissioner. I was here to testify on the bill that we just heard earlier, but I felt that I would be remiss if I did not put my 2 cents in on this bill as well. I'm here representing myself and the constituents of Precinct 2 in El Paso County, and I'm testifying against SB 15. El Paso, like the communities you all represent, is not immune to the hate and discrimination that the LGBTQIA plus community faces. Much of that hate and discrimination is specifically aimed at my transgender constituents. No constituent of any of us should suffer from random acts of violence driven by fear and intolerance. No constituent should be the subject of state-sponsored discrimination. Texas leads the nation in transgender murders. Let me repeat that. The state leads the nation in transgender murders. Where are the bills that address those issues? Where are the bills that address accurate, science-based public education that is essential to understanding sexuality and gender and biology? Statistically, transgender individuals make up a very small percentage of the population, and as we've heard, also make up a very small percentage of individuals who are playing sports. Why are we spending such precious legislative time on this? Really, I think the question answers itself. Let's be real. This bill furthers the discrimination already felt by transgender individuals. It's hard enough to get through adolescence and young adulthood, and putting a target on a young person's back, I think it is just difficult for me to understand. I'll say it again, Texas leads in transgender murders. According to a January report from the Trevor Project, a national LGBTQ youth suicide prevention organization, we've heard earlier as well, 71% of LGBTQ youth said that debates over bills like this affect how they negatively impact their mental health. And 86% of transgender youth reported negative mental health repercussions from such legislation. The mental health of all members of our communities should matter to all of us. This bill furthers that damaging framework, one of intolerance and discrimination instead of love and acceptance. This community needs our support, not our hate. This community deserves dignity and respect, not this attempt to marginalize and discriminate. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Members, are there any questions for the witnesses? Senator Middleton, you're recognized.
I had one. Thank you, Chairwoman. Darren, you're an attorney, correct? So I had a question about Title IX. I mean, that's obviously statutory, and some of the arguments that we've heard against it are based on administrative or agency rule changes. How do you see that interacting? In other words, would the proposed Title IX changes under the Department of Education, or could they have any impact on statutory law? Because it would seem that, anytime you're dealing with agency rulemaking, there's no way that could supersede what was passed by Congress. If you don't like it, change in Congress, right? So I was wondering if you could talk more about how those two would interact between the rulemaking that's proposed under the Department of Education now and the statutory provisions of Title IX.
Well, Senator, thank you for the question, and thank you for not asking me how much I bench press. The question that you raise is, I think, one that we're going to soon find out how it gets resolved. As you know, the Title IX comment period is coming to a close if it hasn't already, and we expect the agency to issue new rulemaking. I think that what I would anticipate seeing is, that challenged through litigation, and so we would find out how that would impact it. But I don't think that if the legislature chooses to pass this bill that would have an impact on the legislature's passing the bill.
Thank you, Senator Middleton. Any other questions? All right. Thank you all for staying with us tonight, and appreciate you sharing your stories with us. The chair calls Trudy Meyer, Leah Hulin, Mildred Hulin, Susanna Hulin, and Josiah Hulin. And if I didn't say that right, I said it wrong 4 times. Okay. I think they are not here, so I'll continue. I'll call 4 other witnesses: Brian Klosterboer, Jonathan Symes, Robert Green, and Jennifer Evans. Chair also calls Melissa Martin, and Tony Carrillo. Chair calls Goldie Sunshine and Ed Johnson. Chair calls Michelle Evans. They made you sit in the first seat, didn't they? All right.
Am I in the right spot?
Yes. So Ed, is that
yes.
right?
Ed Johnson.
Yes,
I'm
thank you.
Here in support of the bill, speaking for myself. Talking about history goes back a long ways. When I was in high school, I was a swimmer. And in the Houston area, it was the powerhouse team at the time. And ended up with 7 of my high school swim mates that qualified for the Olympic swim team. 4 of them held world records at the time. So the Dad's Club Swimming was the place to go in the United States at the time for swimming. I wanted to talk about the torture that you're putting athletes under that spend their whole life training for this, and at the last minute you take it away from them or change the rules, because that's what happened to these 7 athletes. It was the Jimmy Carter era where we boycotted the Olympics. And all these were planning to go to the Olympics. They had been training swimming since they were 6 years old. It took them a decade almost to get over this. It mentally destroyed them It was their whole life's purpose that they had worked for, to become the world champion, to become the gold medalist. And, it was just overnight, pulled out from underneath them, which was devastating for these people. That was their whole life up to then. So it's a lot more mentally challenging for an athlete to, at the last second, change the rules of the game and take that possibility away from them. And that's, a big concern in this. The transgender person that wakes up one morning and wants to change sexes hasn't been training their whole life for that. These people have been dedicating it since they were probably 6 years old to do this. And all of a sudden we just yank it out from underneath them.
Thank you. And we have you registered for the
Yes, I registered for the bill.
Thank you. All right, state your name and give us your testimony, please.
My name is Michelle Evans, and I'm a chapter lead for Independent Women's Network in Round Rock, Texas. I'm here representing myself and that organization, speaking for SB 15. Even with the advancements subsequent to Title IX, sex discrepancies continue to exist in athletic scholarships. Presently, young men receive most athletic scholarships, adding up to millions in additional dollars from male athletes over female athletes. These funds cover the costs of tuition, books, room and board, and more. Without SB 15, females are in jeopardy of having even more scholarship money granted to males, putting them at risk of missing out on opportunities to achieve on the field and in the classroom. It's undeniable that males and females are biologically different. One just has to look at the science of the human body. The body composition, hormone levels, and bone structures are different between men and women. Women are not simply a smaller version of men. Our hormones fluctuate throughout each month and throughout our lifespan, and these individual unique experiences are impossible to replicate. Males interested in playing on female sports teams are likely undergoing or have already undergone male puberty, during which boys experience notable changes which put them at a distinct advantage. Examples include broader shoulders, wider wingspan, lower body fat, higher muscle mass, greater height. The list could go on, but my time is limited. Regardless of whatever hormone protocol these males might be using, the biological male physical advantage remains. In addition to the unfair situation young women are placed in when they are forced to compete with biological males in sports, these young women have their privacy and security put at risk when they are forced to share locker rooms with biological males, and this is happening without consent. SB 15 is vital if we wish to preserve a culture which respects and reveres the unique contributions of women, if we value the safety and security of girls, and if we care to continue providing females with equal opportunities to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your testimony tonight. State your name, please, and give us your testimony.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, my name is Jonathan Sines, and I'm president and attorney for Texas Values, and I'm testifying tonight in support of Senate Bill 15 by Senator Middleton. As a licensed attorney in the state of Texas for almost 20 years, I know how important the law is. I know the impact that it can have when it's clear in our state law, particularly when we know that there's an identifiable problem that's before us. That's so much a part of what this body does. This legislature is about finding solutions to legitimate problems, and the case has been made strongly that a problem exists. I also know, and I was taught in law school, that the law is a teacher. What we have in the law says something about who we are as a body of people, a country, and a state. I also know that it matters what the law says. So I want to talk a little bit about that. Let me be very clear. Title IX does not include discrimination protection for sexual orientation and gender identity. Title VII has been ruled by the U.S. Supreme Court to include those things in the definition of sex, but that is based on an employment decision out of the U.S. Supreme Court in a case called Bostock. In a recent case came up on this issue here in Texas, the controlling precedent from the North District, where an issue like this came up regarding to whether Title VII was the same as Title IX under these discrimination protections. And Judge Kasmerick made it very clear, reciting the Bostock decision and the majority opinion by Justice Gorsuch, that the only question before the employers in that case was about Title VII, and that we need not worry that they would sweep beyond Title VII and these type of issues. The federal courts and our Congress has not ruled on these issues. They have not changed the law. Title IX does not include these protections, and that's why we can protect and save women's sports. I want to say one last thing, if I may, Madam Chair, and I don't say this often as a lawyer, because that's going to keep beeping on me.
Yes, it is.
If I could conclude.
How about, thank you for your testimony, and
Thank you
if
so
let
much
us, let us
for being here
ask you a
tonight.
question perhaps at the end.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brian Klosterbor. I'm an attorney with the ACLU of Texas, testifying on behalf of myself and the ACLU of Texas against this bill. We've heard a lot of information tonight about only a tiny handful of students. It's immensely cruel to pass a law solely to target such a tiny number. There really is no real problem that this bill addresses. As we've heard, there are many problems in women's sports that we could be focused on. But the truth is, as an attorney, I represent a lot of transgender young people in Texas, including a lot of transgender boys who want to play sports with the boys, but have actually been forced under the law passed last session to play on girls' teams. And so they're openly at boys living their lives being forced to play women's sports. I also want to highlight a few really critical flaws with this bill that haven't yet been pointed out. This bill delegates rulemaking authority to the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, which has actually never before ever had any role in sports. Last session, UIL actually ran sports competitions. Here, we're setting up a direct conflict with the NCAA and every other collegiate athletics association. The Texas legislature has never passed a law before regulating who can play sports. We all want to live in a state that's free and fair, and we should trust our universities and these athletics associations. It's already extremely difficult to play as a transgender college student. You have to submit all of your hormone levels 4 weeks before any competition. It's highly invasive. Only a tiny handful of trans students even try, and this bill slams the door in their face. We've heard a lot of really unscientific information tonight. What we didn't hear is that 1.7% of people are born intersex. This bill completely erases their identities. It's unscientific. We should trust the experts. We shouldn't have the government conflicting with NCAA, and please oppose this bill. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. If you would state your name and give us your testimony, please.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Evans, and I am in support of SB 15, and I'm representing myself. I have been involved in athletics since I was 5, including competitive gymnastics, high school track and soccer, college soccer, and currently play on a women's soccer team. I have witnessed firsthand through playing soccer with males, coaching males and females in high school track, and watching both my kids play on a high school co-ed soccer team, that the biological differences between males and females overwhelmingly led to male domination. No matter how talented the female soccer players were, or how fast the female runners were, the less skilled males would still dominate through sheer strength and speed. I'm here for my daughter, Macy. She's a sophomore in college, and she runs on a D1 track college here in Texas. And all of her hard work to achieve the goal of running on a D1 team would be crushed by allowing males to compete with her. The fact is, college-level female runners are easily beat by high school boys, and yes, even some middle school boys. One of the fastest female runners in the world, Allison Felix, has time slower than over 300 high school boys. The fastest time in the nation for the 400-meter women's division is 49.87. The fastest time in the nation in the middle school boys division is 48.09. The impact of allowing this could mean my daughter and females across the country potentially losing out on awards and scholarships. How will our daughters ever stand a chance against the advantage males have over females? We must put facts before feelings. Sport is based on physical performance, not how one feels, thinks, or identifies. All the progress that Title IX has produced towards equality in sports for our daughters will be erased. All the patience and determination it took for our mothers and their mothers to get their own league apart from men will be erased. What is the purpose of having a female category if we are forced to compete against males that are 12% faster and 30% stronger? I'm imploring you to support my daughter's rights and support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Members, are there any questions? I had one. I was very curious about what else you were thinking, Mr. Sines.
Well, thank you for that courtesy, Madam Chairwoman. Many of the members of the legislature are aware that oftentimes my testimony is focused on my expertise, which is in law and policy, having spent work in this building even as an intern, as a student at the University of Texas, long before I became a licensed attorney. And it's a pleasure to do that, and I appreciate the interactions, whether we agree or disagree over time. And I know, Madam Chair, we typically agree. But this issue is also personal for me. I have a teenage daughter who practices every day in the kitchen, in the living room, wherever she has a little bit of space. And she has made it her dream and a goal that she has now to compete at a collegiate level for dance. She's the youngest of my three. I have two boys who have had quite a bit of competitive sports career before she had her time a little bit in the sun. And her own doing, she did her own research, and she found a university in the state of Texas that many know of and is well known for competitive dance. And it's one of the few places where you can have that and have that type of prominence. And she's made it her goal to do that, to have an opportunity for that. And I've seen even the dance industry starting to move in this direction, where I think you're going to see young ladies lose opportunities and lose the ability to compete on a level playing field. She had her first competition a couple of weeks ago, and she was so excited with the team that she was in to be recognized and to stand on a podium. That's a reality. That is a part of this process, that recognition, that hours of time. And so I'm not only here supporting this Senate Bill 15 as a lawyer, but also as a father who's got a girl that I'm with every day and is a part of my family, and probably one of the best opportunities for her to advance in a college that fits her specific abilities to learn and to become successful is the opportunity that she could have in athletics. And so thank you for letting me share that, and I continue to ask you to support Senate Bill 15.
Well, thank you very much for your testimony and for satisfying my curiosity as well at this late hour tonight. Thank you all for being here and sharing your stories with us. Appreciate it. The chair calls Ken Moore, Pamela Johnson, Megan Benton, Brian McAuliffe, and Mary Elizabeth Castle. Chair calls Jonathan Covey and Sharon DeMarcis. I feel like I didn't do that right. Chair calls Genevieve Collins. Chair calls Chad Green. And as Chad is making his way, let's go on and get started. As we've been doing, the panel is testifying and then we're asking questions at the end. But if you would state your name for the record and give us your testimony, please.
Okay. My name is Ken Moore. I'm a state Republican executive committee man for Senate District 11. I represent the SRC and Republican voters in Senate District 11. I am here to testify in favor of SB 15. The following is an excerpt from an article from the Ethics and Public Policy Center. It is entitled, "Allowing Biological Males in Women's Sports is Scientifically Unsound." And the excerpt reads, "A recent review of 24 medical studies published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine explains the athletic advantages of XY chromosomes at the cellular level. It shows that biological males have advantages in muscle mass, lean body mass, muscle strength, and 2 measures of endurance. While synthetic estrogen and anti-testosterone pharmaceuticals have been shown to slightly decrease these parameters, inborn advantages from the latent effects of a lifetime of testosterone persists." The article concludes, values for strength, lean body mass, and muscle area in trans women remain above those of biological women even after 36 months of hormone therapy. Committee members, I came of age in the 70s and 80s. This was a time when women's rights was a very real thing. The formation of women's sports leagues was seen as a major step forward for women, but having biological males in women's sports destroys all this. That's my testimony.
Thank you for your testimony. Welcome. Introduce yourself and give us your testimony.
Thank you, Chairman Hughes and members of the committee. My name is Megan Benton, and I'm a student at the University of Texas at Austin and a policy intern for Texas Values. I'm here today to testify in favor of Senate Bill 15. I have a handout I'd like to submit along with my oral testimony, which contains signatures of alumni from the University of Texas regarding the issue at hand. I am currently pursuing a degree in kinesiology, so I understand how unfair it is for women to be competing against men, especially at the collegiate level. In kinesiology, we discuss what are called individual differences quite frequently. These are factors that cannot be changed by any amount of training and are linked to success in athletics. These things include things like limb length, height, and heart size, but most important, biological sex. Therefore, I understand how unfair it is to tell female athletes who have dedicated their lives to their sport that they must compete against biological men for the sake of inclusion. This issue is near and dear to my heart. I'm a ballet dancer, and no matter how hard I train, male dancers will always be stronger. Thankfully, in my dance career, I've never been put in a position where I'm at a disadvantage, but that's not the case for everyone. According to the New York Post, last summer at Ranger College in Texas, a transgender woman was kicked off the cheerleading team for allegedly choking a teammate. This is a tragic story because the victim of this crime should never have been forced to be in this position. I've been involved in dance and athletics since I was 3 years old, and participation in those activities have helped shape me into who I am today. Thanks to the Texas legislature last session, youth sports have been protected, and young girls can have the same experience as I did. However, it's time to expand this protection to collegiate athletes. Therefore, I stand in favor of Senate Bill 15. It's time for Texas to take the lead and protect women's sports. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Welcome. Even though we know you, introduce yourself and give us your testimony.
Good evening, Chairman Hughes and whoever's left of the committee. My name is Mary Elizabeth Castle, and I'm the Director of Government Relations for Texas Values Action. Texas Values has been the leading organization in the past 2 years in seeing legislation get passed to protect women and girls from having their chance of victory and opportunities stolen by men playing in their sports. In January, I rallied for 2 hours with 40 women athletes ranging from high school to Olympic medalists in San Antonio, Texas, outside the NCAA convention. Their stories were astounding, and you heard some of them today, and we'll hear some of them later tonight. Texas is on the right track in having the Save Girls Sports Law already in place that protects girls' sports in grades K through 12, but the work is not finished. Women college sports need to be protected as well, as the stakes are higher. If spots on college women's team are stolen by men, then thousands of women could lose scholarships, revenue for name and likeness, championships, and even a future career. That career could be in the Olympics, but it could be in the boardroom, as 96% of female CEOs play competitive sports at some point in their life. In fact, this is what Title IX was created to protect. When Congresswoman Patsy Mink, a woman who was almost denied the opportunity to attend law school because of her sex, presented the idea of Title IX, it was almost vetoed out of the bill to have sports protected, but it was imperative to have education opportunities in sports included in Title IX. The number of men competing in women's sports is increasing exponentially, and let's not forget that the opportunity for women to play sports is already slim, as only 40% of teenage girls participate in sports, and 90% of colleges are failing to offer athletic opportunities that are not proportional to their enrollment. And the problem will only get worse with the Biden administration, and that is why I have a letter with you that our team, along with 28 other diverse organizations, sent to the Department of Education talking about this illegal and illogical redefinition of sex in Title IX. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Welcome. Introduce yourself and give us your testimony.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Jonathan Kevey. I'm the Policy Director for Texas Values. And just wanted to tell you a little bit about some of the legal victories we've had recently. In the past year or two, we've had several important victories. I'm testifying, by the way, in favor of SB 15. We saw several important legal victories in our efforts to uphold the truth that we're created female and male, and those differences matter for privacy and for fairness in sports. Right at the end of December last year, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals issued a decision on Title IX. Let me read to you one of the quotes from Judge Barbara Lagoa. She said, this appeal centers on whether discrimination based on biological sex necessarily entails discrimination based on transgender status. It does not. A policy can lawfully classify on the basis of biological sex without unlawfully discriminating on the basis of transgender status. This is exactly what Title IX does. It upholds fairness for women in sports. And as recent as November of last year, a federal district judge here in Texas, Judge Matthew Kaczmarek, ruled that Bostock does not apply to Title IX. That is current law. Any suggestion to the contrary is misinformation, and it is misunderstanding at best. And that's why the ACLU comes before the Texas Senate and shares little anecdotes and tells us that we should trust the experts like sheep instead of parsing law like they're supposed to. And I'd call that the epitome of unscientific testimony.
Thanks for your testimony. Introduce yourself again and give us your testimony. Welcome back.
Thank you for the time. I appreciate yours. My name is Chad Green. I'm a trustee at McKinney ISD. I'm speaking on my own behalf and the behalf of my constituents and young lady athletes in McKinney, as well as my daughter. So you've protected the young ladies in K through 12, but if there's no future, what protection is there? If they cannot continue to believe that, hey, I have an opportunity for a scholarship, what future do they have in the athletics of their choice? If they've dedicated themselves and they've gone out and done these things, then you're actually creating the victims by letting trans men come into that organization and compete with them. So I'm speaking for SB 15, and I would encourage that this bill would be approved and go through.
Thank you for your testimony. Senators, any questions for the witnesses? Thank you each for being here. The chair now calls Mary Krenick, Maxie Taylor, Quinn Hong Nguyen, Nicole Ma, and Julie Ziegelman. Again, the chair calls Mary Krenick, Maxie Taylor, Kin Hong Nguyen, Nicole Ma, and Julie Ziegelman. The chair calls Genevieve Collins, Chloe Goodman, Valerie DeBille, Andrea Segovia. Again, the chair calls Genevieve Collins, Chloe Goodman, Valerie DeBille, Andrea Segovia. Let me see if is there anyone else present wishing to testify on, for, or against Senate Bill 15? So please make your way down here so we can get your testimony. And very good. Are you wishing to testify? Come on down. Thanks. Okay, before we get started, sir, I'm going to ask you, did you already do your registration out there, or are you going to do that later?
I already registered.
Very good. So when we come to you, we'll make sure we got your name and make sure we want to have everything right for your testimony. Very good. So we'll begin customarily on this side. Please introduce yourself and give us your testimony. Welcome.
All right. Well, good evening. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Chloe Goodman. I am an LMSW. I have a second master's degree in public affairs, and I'm representing myself and the nonprofit Equality Texas, and I'm testifying against SB 15 because it is a targeted attack on an already vulnerable population. It denies benefits of athletics to trans and non-binary young adults, and lastly, it's entirely unnecessary. So first, it is a targeted attack on a vulnerable population. Y'all have already heard about suicide statistics for trans and other queer people, so you either care or you don't. But I will share that we know what exacerbates the risk of suicide for queer young adults, and some of them are wrapped up in this bill, including rejection and a lack of social support and affirming spaces, discrimination, and physical harm and bullying, which is the reality that trans athletes face if they're forced to perform on the opposite team of what they identify with. So secondly, it denies the benefits of participation in sports to trans and non-binary athletes. I'm not gonna lie, of all the people talking about sports here tonight, none of them made a convincing argument of why people should be involved in athletics. Because sports is not just about medals and trophies. Sports is also about community, camaraderie, establishing a network of support, mentorship. It's good for both physical and mental health. It's good for stress relief, and it boosts academic performance. So, denying transgender and non-binary people a place in athletics denies them all of that, and it also cuts them out of receiving athletic scholarships. Lastly, it's entirely unnecessary. And I can tell you why if you would like me to. Yeah?
Let's hear from everybody, and then we'll see if we have any questions. Thank you. Thanks for your testimony. Welcome. Introduce yourself and give us your testimony.
Hi, my name is Valerie DeBille, and I'm here testifying against Senate Bill 15 on behalf of myself. I actually can elaborate on that. The NCAA has decided that they are going to align their positions with those of the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, which is to yield to the regulating body for every sport. So there are different sports have different levels of testosterone that they permit. They have different requirements. They have different things. The NCAA has a process that you have to fill out forms and submit medical. There's tons of it already. You guys are taking a hammer to something that's already been fixed with tweezers. On the subject of mental health, I would like to add that my son is 23 years old. He's transgender, and he wanted to be here today, but he didn't think he could do so without screaming. He is constantly hearing in the news about how much his state hates him and doesn't want him here and does not want him participating in life. As someone whose younger brother committed suicide 10 years ago, that is terrifying for me to hear. And every time you do this, you reinforce the idea that Texas does not want trans people to exist. You would rather they not exist than that they have a minuscule impact on women's sports, which you don't care about unless you can use it as a cudgel to beat up women, to beat up trans women. The citation of the runner earlier was a trans man who was forced to compete on the women's team because he was biologically female. And the fact that none of the witnesses in favor of this bill have given the athletes the dignity of referring to them by their proper gender and pronouns is telling that this is not about women's sports. This is about beating up trans people and reminding them that you do not want them to exist. Also, if you're going to go out of your way to talk about the physical differences between people born male and people born female, but then also outlaw puberty blockers, which would prevent that disparity, that seems pretty ridiculous.
Thanks for your testimony. Welcome, introduce yourself, and give us your testimony.
This initially said afternoon, but it's like nighttime now. So good night, Chairman Hughes and members of the committee. My name's Adri Bettis. I was born and raised in El Paso, Texas, and now I live here in Austin, and I'm testifying on behalf of myself against SB 15. When I was a kid, the only thing that I wanted to grow up to be was someone that helped people. And one of the ways that you can do that is being an elected official. So you can imagine my disappointment when I grow up to have to come here year after year since 2017 to urge you to stop caring so much about what genitals transgender people have. It's kind of weird, honestly. Respectfully, I think that there's so much more that goes into being a person. It is disappointing to me that you use that power, that privilege, and that gift to perpetuate hate and heighten the levels of discrimination and outright violence that transgender children and adults like myself face daily. Here's the thing, this bill is not about safety or fair competition. If it were, we would be having a genuine conversation about what that could look like for all people and for all bodies. And I assure you that categorically banning transgender people from participating is not a fair solution. You've made a villain out of a handful of transgender athletes in the country, none of them in Texas, while other real issues that impact Texans go unaddressed. All this does is stoke fear and hate to fuel your base into worrying about something that does not affect them. Transgender people deserve respect, and we deserve to be talked about like human beings, not as villains in your stories. If this is about saving women's sports, why don't you use the budget surplus to fund women's sports in Texas? If this is not about targeting transgender people, why won't you pass a bill that protects me from discrimination? No matter how hateful your rhetoric, I will continue to show up. I will continue to exist. And I will continue to find joy and fight back for my community. I truly think I'm the only transgender person in this building right now. No matter how hateful, we are not here to hurt you, and we just want to exist. And we deserve to have dreams. We deserve to play sports. We deserve to exist in public life. We deserve to be protected, and we deserve to find joy.
Well, thanks for your testimony. And if you will, will you check in with Ms. Babb and make sure we have your record of your testimony to make sure it's in the system right. We want to make sure it's all on the record. Thank you. Welcome. Introduce yourself and give us your testimony.
Hello, my name is Andrea Segovia. I'm here representing myself. I'm also the Senior Policy Advisor at the Transgender Education Network of Texas, the largest trans-led, trans-focused policy org here in the state of Texas. I'm here in opposition of SB 15. I think it's important to state that the NCAA already has policies in regards to trans and gender expansive athletes. The NCAA is comprised of experts on how to govern their sports for all collegiate athletes across the country, not just in Texas. I know one thing that we tend to agree on is the importance of small government and people's personal freedoms. So I'm unsure how stopping athletes from representing their schools, their state, is in line with those beliefs. This bill will continue to hurt Texans in being discriminatory towards a group of young people who are already playing by all of the rules set forth by the NCAA and doing nothing to cause this harm. This bill is discriminatory because it not only puts a target on trans athletes, but also all athletes who might be seen as too masculine or too feminine, as we've seen in the past year with the athlete ban currently in place, as well as continue to leave intersex athletes with no direction in how they can play their sport. Passing this bill will put even more pressure on administrators and coaches who are already struggling to keep up with current policy changes in sports. This bill denies the lived realities of our educators who want to make safe spaces for all students. In a time where people in our state are having to decide to feed their kids or pay their rent, when we're still figuring out what safety in schools looks like after UVA, so it never happens again, this should not be the priority of this body or this committee or any legislator in this body. The problem authors of this bill say they're trying to address, simply put, does not exist. Student athletes have not been asking for this type of legislation unless here by other groups. They've been asking for equal funding and carrying out protections under Title IX, which trans people are included in. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Introduce yourself and give us your testimony. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. My name is Don Garner. I'm the Executive Director of Texas Faith and Freedom Coalition, whose mission is to give people of faith a voice in government. And towards that end, I have the privilege of speaking in support of bills like Senate Bill 15. Others have provided overwhelming scientific data supporting the passage of this bill. Citing such evidence must seem unnecessary to the average person. Just 2 weekends ago, I was at an annual cycling event. I ride with one of the largest clubs in the country, based here in Austin. There was a lot of murmuring around our tent after the juniors race had concluded. And once they held the podium for the junior girls, I understood why. Our team's girls had placed second and third behind a biological male, and it was clear that everyone was upset about it. This was not a conservative gathering, I assure you. And yet, it seemed that everyone there was a clear consensus this was an injustice done to the young ladies on our team. As a father of 4 boys and 3 girls, of whom all but one participated in competitive sports, I can tell you that not one of them would entertain any arguments put forth that girls can compete fairly and safely with biological males. The injustice done to female athletes seems plain to conservatives and liberals alike. It's demoralizing to female athletes who have demonstrated inspiring levels of dedication to compete in their respective sports at the highest level. It also tends to render championships and record-setting performances meaningless. Add to this the obvious danger posed to girls competing with biological males in contact sports like wrestling. SB 15 will restore safety and fairness to girls' sports. Please vote for the passage of Senate Bill 15.
Thank you for your testimony. Senators, any questions for any of our witnesses? Thank you each for being here. Is there anyone else present who wishes to testify on, for, or against Senate Bill 15? Those are all the witnesses we have registered. Anyone else present wishing to testify on, for, or against Senate Bill 15? Seeing none, public testimony is closed, and Senate Bill 15 is left pending at this time. Well, I thank the members of the committee, and I especially thank the members of this committee staff and each member staff, and most importantly, those real people who showed up to testify. Everyone's important. Everybody's voice is heard. So with that, we thank everyone for their courtesies, and the Senate Committee on State Affairs will stand in recess subject to the call of the chair. Good evening.